All right. So I'm going to start right now.
That's good.
Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I'm here with Jason DeBolt, and we're going to talk to you about Jason's story of investing in Tesla, about investing in Tesla versus sort of the more standard investing or idea of diversification. Jason did the opposite of that. We're going to talk about Tesla's future as a company, where we think it's heading. Maybe we'll talk about some of Elon Musk's other companies. We're going to talk about life as a Teslanaire. What happens in your life? How do you live your life when these things change, when all of a sudden you have more money than you thought you might have? One of the big topics I love to talk about is about being like Elon Musk. What can we learn from Elon? How can we try to live our lives more like Elon? We think he's making the world a better place, so we want to do that. And last, we're going to have a Q&A where we have a chat on the side of the, at least on my computer, it's on the side. For if you're on phone, it might be down below, but we'll be looking for questions and answering them. I'll be looking at questions and we'll try to discuss them in the chat, but that's going to be towards the end. So for starters, Jason DeBolt is famous for having invested heavily in Tesla at a fairly young age and retiring with a large sum of a large valuation in his Tesla stock at a still fairly young age. Jason, can you tell people a little bit about your story?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Warren. Thanks for having me. I'm a huge fan of your channel and also your Clubhouse rooms. So and your Twitter. Yeah. So I'm Jason DeBolt. I'm 39. I recently retired with about $12 million in Tesla stock that I've been investing in since 2013. It's a little bit down since my retirement because Tesla has gone down a bit, but so I've been investing in Tesla since 2013. I was an early Model S owner, so I first saw Tesla at the Maker Fair in San Mateo in 2009. That kind of created a space in my brain for the company. I continued to follow it. I walked into a sales center in 2011 and ordered a Tesla. 18 months later, got a call from the Fremont factory to pick it up. Got a factory tour, drove the Tesla home, and only after all of that did I finally decide to buy some Tesla stock. And I'm glad I did, because that was about $7.50 per share split adjusted. In 2013, I put in about $19,000 for my initial investment, and that was worth about $2 million at Tesla's peak. So done pretty well with that. I continued to invest since then throughout the dormant period between 2014 and 2019, where Tesla went nowhere. I just continued to buy up stock and taking extreme measures to put as much money as I could into Tesla, because I knew that it was undervalued. And then 2020 was a breakout year, and that changed my life. I decided to retire once I had enough money, and I'm retired. So yeah, that's my
okay. Cool. Just really quick before we go further, I don't want to forget, I want to thank the Vasa law firm in Sweden and all my Patreon supporters for helping this channel grow. There's a link to Patreon below. There's also a link to Jason's Twitter and a link to a few videos that are going to be related to what we're going to talk about. So thanks to the Patreon supporters again. You mentioned that you retired. What did you do?
So I was a software engineer. I was actually doing a DevOps engineering. So that's a profession where it's a relatively new software profession where it's really about feedback loops. It's
development and operations, DevOps.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So it's really about feedback loops and just making your engineers and as productive as possible, right? So that was what I did for a couple of years. Before that, I was a front-end engineer at Google, and then so I was an engineer.
And what part of California do you live in, or did you live in?
I was in all over the Bay Area. So I lived in the East Bay, and I lived in San Francisco, and then I moved to LA in June of last year.
Okay. And have you thought about moving to Austin, Texas?
I definitely thought about it. I have to go there first and check it out. See. I'm sure it's amazing. I mean, there are a lot of people. I think Dave Lee just moved there. There's a lot of interesting people there now. So I'm definitely curious about Austin. So.
Cool. Okay. Somebody just asked, are those virtual reality glasses? I assume that's a no. Some of the comments so far, he's the youngest 39-year-old I've ever seen. I never get that I'm the youngest 55-year-old anyone's ever seen. All right. So I love your story. And if people have questions about his story, we can talk about that in the Q&A. I just want to start with this underlying topic that basically what happened when you bought Tesla in 2013 Was it like the only stock you owned? Did it become? Did there come a point where you were all in on Tesla?
Yeah, that point came when, so I originally had a diversified portfolio. I was just a diversified investor. I think I had about 10 stocks. I was using the Motley Fool Hidden Gems newsletter and kind of reading about some of the stocks and cherry picking some of those. And then I bought some Tesla stock. I think initially it was maybe like 10 to 20% of my portfolio initially. And then there was a big, in Q1 2013, Tesla had an amazing quarter. They just launched the Model S. They actually had a profitable quarter, and the stock price went from like $30 a share to like $80 a share, and then over 100 in the next few months. So that was a huge breakout, and then Tesla started to dominate my portfolio. So I didn't rebalance. I just let it kind of take over.
Right.
And then over the next several months, I just sold off my other stocks and went all in on Tesla.
So you said you worked at Google. Did you have Google stock before?
Yeah, so I had Google stock options.
Right.
So I had restricted stock units. So I say that I'm all in since 2013, but it's not quite entirely true. I did have other stocks probably all the way up through 2015. But I probably had at least 89 to 90% allocation, from late 2013 on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had some restricted stock units, and I sold all that and bought Tesla when I left the company.
Okay.
And,
so when you describe sort of where I was. I've never quite gone as far as you have, but I started back, I would say, I've been managing my own portfolio and a family portfolio for 25 years. Got like 8 different accounts. And it's not as much money as people think I have, but it's not nothing either. And I started with this premise of diversified investing. And actually, in the description below, I have a link to a video, 10 investing tips that sort of talk about where I came from and how I recommend young people invest. It was actually a video made for my children, which of course they won't watch, but they're teenagers, so they're not going to watch anything Daddy says. But just sort of ways to think about investing. And one of the fundamental things that I learned, I studied finance at Stanford Business School's PhD program and as an undergrad as well at Rice University, is there's this concept of having a diversified portfolio. To some extent, you could call it a mean variance efficient portfolio. There's something called the capital asset pricing model. You can get all into that. But fundamentally, it's don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? You want to have multiple investments. So for a large chunk of my investing, it was just mutual funds. Mutual funds get you inherent diversity. Then I started going into exchange traded funds, which are basically mutual funds. And then at a certain point, I started buying individual stocks because all right, I'm going to take 5% of the portfolio and I'll buy a couple stocks. And then it was 10% of the portfolio. And then I just started buying more individual stocks. And I had a good run. I don't know if you remember when Cisco Systems was really riding high.
Yeah.
And I had this good run where I bought, I didn't buy Cisco. I bought their competitors that were smaller, that were undervalued, and I did really well on those. And I bought Apple at one point where I made a really good run on Apple, and then I sold all of these along the way. And probably one of my biggest, but I always had this principle of I don't want to be more than 5% in one stock. That was sort of like, I can have like a big mutual fund as a core investment, as the S&P 500 index fund as a core investment. But I didn't want to go more than, let's say, 5% in one stock. And I remember what I call my biggest mistake in investing was I bought Amazon in 2013. Now, for those who aren't familiar with Amazon's run, in 2013 when I bought it, Amazon was trading at $260 a share. It's currently trading over 3,000, something like 3,200. I haven't looked. This is the funny thing. I don't check my stocks on a daily basis. I literally have not looked at what my Amazon stock price is for more than a month. I just don't know. But it's my second largest investment. And it grew and it grew and it grew. And I started pushing up. It was, well above my 5% limit. And I was like, well, I did, like you mentioned, rebalancing, right? So I sold some Amazon to rebalance at one point. This is 2018. I sold half my Amazon. This is in my portfolio, and the family portfolio, I kept it. And I remember 2 years later, I was like, I shouldn't have sold Amazon. It doubled since then. But then I looked back and I realized I used 2/3 of the money to buy Tesla stock, which had 5x'd from that point to when I was looking. So it was like, well, actually, it was a good thing that but that lesson from Amazon for me was it's okay to go all in sometimes. Or not necessarily go all in, but go bigger. Mm-hmm. So how do you see that? How did you make the break from being a diversified? How did you get over the hurdle? I mean, was it a well-settled idea in your head you're supposed to be diversified?
It was, but probably not as much as it's probably not as well settled as for most investors. I was taught off throughout college that diversification is the way to go. Motley Fool. Basically, I did think it was important, but when I saw Tesla as an opportunity, it just changed everything. I just knew that this company was just ridiculously undervalued. I when you're confronted with an opportunity like that, you kind of have to change the game a little bit and seize that opportunity. So I decided to do that. And yeah, I think most people should diversify because it can end horribly wrong, right? If
Right.
you bet on the wrong horse, so it's I would say that there's a good investment strategy for everyone. There's a good
Yeah.
asset and stock for everyone. Some people should just own bonds. Some people can go all in, but I would never recommend anyone go all in just because it's a personal decision, right? So,
Right.
um, yeah.
Well, no. So, like, I looked at Amazon, and I'll just tell you that there was this like light bulb moment for me with Amazon, which was I was an Amazon Prime customer. Just going back, like I've been a PayPal customer since 2000. I literally made over $1 million in revenue. I'm a lawyer for those who don't know. I literally made over $1 million in revenue as an attorney through PayPal payments. So I'm a PayPal fan. I'm an Elon Musk fan dating back to 2003 when I started taking PayPal. And Amazon, I guess I was something of an early adopter, right? I started shopping on Amazon and eBay. I liked Amazon better. And I realized I got Amazon Prime, and I realized I was checking Amazon every day looking for deals. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I'm an early adopter. If I'm doing this now, then other people might do this later. And that was my reason for jumping in Amazon heavier for buying some.
Mm.
And I still didn't go crazy. I bought a significant holding, but it wasn't crazy. And I actually wasn't right only for that reason. Actually, Amazon Web Services was a big reason that Amazon went up, and I didn't know that much about Amazon Web Services. I mean, I was aware of it, but it wasn't my deciding factor. It's just like, this Prime thing's killer. People are going to adopt this. And I'm trying to remember if I had a watershed moment, light bulb moment with Tesla the same way. Did you have, was it just buying the car? What was the light bulb moment, or was it more than one moment?
It was more than one moment. It actually took a lot for me to finally buy the stock. I mean, I had, I owned the car. I was driving it from the factory. I'd just seen the factory. I got an inside look at the actual factory and all the machinery. I had to go through all of that to eventually buy the stock. But yeah, I did have the factory tour was definitely something that I think influenced me to buy the stock the most. Like the car, actually both the car and the factory. It's weird about this issue of diversification versus concentration. Like we actually concentrate in a lot of our areas of our life. Like we go all in on certain parts of our life. Like when we pick a spouse, like you're going all in on that person. And if you look at say statistics around marriage, it's kind of risky if if you're with the wrong person.
Right. No, like all in. Like I own this house. Right. And
yeah, you go buy a house. Exactly.
This house is
on the local job market, right?
This is a large share of my portfolio that I'm sitting in. Yeah.
Yeah. It's people go all in on their house. They go all in on a small business. It's pretty common. But when it comes to investing in stocks, like going all in is that it's almost unacceptable, right? But I think it's just if you see this. If you see a delta, if you see a difference between what's actually going on at a company versus what people think is going on, especially from professionals like financial professionals or other engineers, if they don't know what this opportunity is, you have an information advantage and you can capitalize on that. And that's just what I did. I think so few people understood what Tesla was doing. Other than that, I don't know if I would have ever gone all in on any other investment. I'm not generally an all in type of person with investing. I'm not I don't have a gambler's mindset. I don't take risks in terms of money and finances. But I do take risks in other parts of my life, but not really with money. So for me to go all in it says something. Like I'm not doing it because I wanted to get rich, or I just saw that this is just a really undervalued asset. Even today, it's just it's worth way more than what the market is pricing it at.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that shortly.
Yeah.
That's the next topic on my list. So I guess I tell people my light bulb moment probably, because like I said, I was a PayPal customer. I followed Elon Musk loosely for a period of time, and they started doing the rocket thing, and I was excited about that. And for me, I feel like the moment they landed the orbital rocket booster the first time on December 21, 2015, there was this ongoing backstory that somehow Elon Musk is a fraud, that he won't be able to do it, that this is, whatever. There was this underlying story that wasn't really credible. And when they landed the rocket, it was like, well, because, Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, there's these stories of these actual fraud companies that managed to fake it for a long time, fake it till you make it. Frauds don't land orbital rocket boosters, And
there you go. I love that.
That should be a t-shirt. That should be a t-shirt. T-shirts.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Like, it's funny that people actually invested in Theranos. Like, I could smell that fraud a mile away. Like, I just saw very early on that this was just it was like vaporware. And whenever you have a CEO or an executive that's obsessed about like image and just being like, so I can almost pick up phoniness in people that aren't builders, like people who just want to appear as if they're making progress. Because, I've worked with such people. I kind of know who they are. And I just feel like there's a builder's mindset that some of the great executives have. Like Jeff Bezos has it, right? He understands how to build things. Like, if you read about him, he's just somebody who cares about, he has a very long-term vision, and so does Elon. They both have extremely long-term visions. They're both super smart. There's this paper I like to talk about with Jeff Bezos about. There's a guy named Steve Yegi who wrote a blog post, a Google Plus blog post many years ago about how Jeff Bezos basically created AWS. But I mean, it was actually he didn't actually create AWS, but he provided the foundation, the kind of groundwork that ultimately led to AWS. It's pretty amazing stuff that he understood things like APIs back in the day and how important they were, and microservices, and that ultimately led to kind of having componentized infrastructure, which allowed them to deploy those as individual AWS services. So there are a lot of leaders where that's just, they cannot even conceptualize that. Like, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are very smart, and they understand, technical things very well. So, and you can just look at their businesses and see how that's manifested, right? It's taken years for those companies to really ramp up. They have this flywheel. It just takes a long time.
Yeah.
But once they're running, it's like they're unstoppable. Right?
Yeah, I'm kind of a believer in founder-run companies. Of course, Theranos was a founder-run company, but where the founders got a very heavy investment in the company, they own 25 or 50% of the company, and they have a vision and they're leading the company. So Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, to some extent. I would used to say Zuckerberg. I don't say that anymore. That's a long conversation. But Jack Dorsey, definitely, I get that feel from Jack Dorsey that the companies he runs, he has a vision, and I feel like I hear people criticize Tesla and they criticize Elon Musk, and I'm like, so you want John Scully to come in and take over? Where are you going with that? They're like, Elon Musk is both. Like, if you ask people what the problem is with Tesla, they'll say Elon Musk. Is like, well, what would happen to the stock if Elon Musk left the company? Oh, it would go down. Well, make up your mind, right? But so I want to talk about this diversification thing a little bit more. So just because I want to differentiate it, and I guess what I would say is this: I still have a fair amount of diversification, right? It's just that, like you said, my Tesla stock grew, and I didn't sell any, right? Actually, I have bought more, which is probably I sometimes feel like I've gone too far because it dipped to when it dipped below 400, I couldn't stop. I had to buy more, and then there was a recent dip. Around 600, I bought some more stock around 600, just because I'm looking at it and I just see it's going to crazy. But I feel like kind of what you're saying. There's this moment where I would call it conviction investing. You get to a stock where you have the light bulb moment, and you develop a conviction, and you can't just be the light bulb moment, right? Like the day after the rocket landed, I didn't start buying Tesla stock. It actually took me a couple of months. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when you start researching. That's when you start saying, okay, this looks amazing. Let me learn more. And I kind of what you said about, I know more than these other people. Everybody who knows me knows I have been researching Tesla for like 2 years now. Intently. I'm just like, it's like my full-time job is researching Tesla and SpaceX, and Neuralink and Boring Company, and I'm somewhat other related things, but I really focus a lot of time on Tesla. I'm paying attention to a lot of details, and I'll see somebody who is criticizing Tesla saying it's overvalued, and I'll just ask him a question like, well, how many batteries do you think they're going to make in 2022? And the response is usually like the equivalent of a blank stare. Like they haven't even pondered the possibility that Tesla would make a battery. Right? They didn't watch, like, how can you form a judgment about Tesla's future and its valuation if you didn't watch Battery Day and you didn't watch Autonomy Day? And you didn't listen to Andre Karpathy's recent interview on the Robot Brains podcast, and you didn't listen to Jim Keller with Lex Friedman. If you follow all those things and you get really into it, and then you watch the Wall Streeters talking down Tesla, and you're like, well, what about this? And they're talking like, well, it's a 30% growth rate. Like, I think I just saw 109% growth rate. What are you watching versus what I'm watching? I'm trying to figure out what movie you're watching, because we're watching different movies. And I think that's where conviction investing comes from, is if you go deep enough into looking at a company, and it can't be just, I see that this company is going to do really well. It has to be that other people don't see it. Yeah. That's where the opportunity is. And that's where we had this whole Tesla Cube movement, the FUD. The media is still, like, it's still amazing to me how much the media bashes Tesla. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's what in particular did you think you saw in Tesla that others didn't see?
I think I just saw the so I saw cost curves. Like I saw the what they were building with the skateboard and EVs. I just saw that there's really no bottom. There's no floor for their cost cutting, or reducing costs. I mean, the internal combustion engine has been around for 100 years. It's a super old technology. That's a long time to optimize and improve and reduce costs for a given technology. And there's 2 billion internal combustion engines in the world. So Wright's law, it's not going to happen anymore. Like they're not going to actually innovate on top of that. They can't reduce costs. The cost of an internal combustion engine is $5,700. It's been like that for a long time. Whereas with EVs, I mean, I just saw, Moore's law, right? Like Moore's law potential, not just with the batteries, but the actual car itself, with the manufacturing, taking a fresh look at manufacturing and looking at and it's so minimalistic. Like you just look at the chassis and the battery and everything. Right. It's so, for me, I just like, they're going to eventually make this thing for, $15,000, $20,000. They'll make cars someday. I knew that they would get to that point. So yeah,
2023, 2023. Yeah. It's going to be their cost of manufacturing in 2023 is going to be $20,000 or less.
There you go. I mean, this is like something I saw in 2013. I was like, this technology is so far. It's more than 10x better. I mean, this technology is like, even as a kid, I grew up racing slot cars and remote control trucks and things like that. I just saw electric cars as like, why can't we just scale this up? I mean, these are I just saw the potential of electric vehicles. And it's all about cost, right? Yeah. They can make something a quarter of the cost of a regular car. Then, I mean, I talk about this ignition system of a car. It's really complex. There's a lot of things going on with that, and you don't need that with EVs. I mean, there's just a lot of elimination of parts. This is before, so I went all in on Tesla before autopilot.
Well, let me ask you this: when's the last time you changed the oil on your Tesla?
You don't have to change it. I mean, there's no maintenance. I mean, you replace the windshield, the washer fluid, and then the tires, and that's essentially it. I mean, for me, it was just so obvious that this technology would eventually be the default mode of transportation, electric vehicles. I just saw that as inevitable, and Tesla was in the lead. And Tesla, when they first started, people thought that people were doubting EVs, right?
Yeah.
They didn't think it was viable. And you know, so and just being around people who are relatively pretty smart, you know, being around a lot of Google engineers, and even they weren't even convinced about EVs. You know, they kind of had skepticism. And but if you look at it in a first principles way, like what I did, just looking at individual components of the car and looking at the comparable components to an internal combustion car,
Yeah.
I mean, there's either that part doesn't exist or it's like dramatically cheaper. So it was all about cost curves and economics for me. And this
Right.
is again before autopilot, you know, before the plans that we have today with
Right.
Tesla. This is, you know, just making the Model S.
So let's move on to that next topic. You and I both agree that Tesla is still undervalued. We think it has a long way to go. Without modeling, do you have a ballpark sense of where you think the stock could go in, let's say, by 2030?
Yeah, I think we're headed towards, you know, at least 10,000 per share, probably somewhere around 20,000.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. I mean, we've had, you know, like, yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. I mean, if you look at ever since 2013, there's been maybe, you know, I don't know what it's been, 50x growth or something. Maybe more, actually more. Yeah, actually it's 100x, I think, since 2013.
Yeah.
So that's 100x in 7 years. I mean, in the next 10 years, I think it's reasonable to say at least 10 to 20x.
Yeah.
And, you know, so yeah, I mean, that's just a really lazy analysis, but like the company is, I mean, this market is so massive. I mean, the TAMs, the total addressable markets, are bigger than anything we've ever seen. I mean, there's no other disruption plays, you know, that are bigger than this, right?
Okay, so I just want to express my appreciation for your bear theory on where Tesla's going to go in 2030. For those who follow me know that I actually think it's going to go even higher than that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think we're going to see $10,000 to $20,000 a share by 2025. So, and I want to talk about that a little bit, but I just want to ask you, we talked about what did you see that they didn't see in, say, 2013 to 2015. What do you think you see now that the Gary Blacks, the Wall Streeters, the Tesla Q people, not the Tesla Q liars, but the people who are genuinely doubting Tesla from some Wall Street or outsider perspective, what is it that you see that they don't see?
That's a good one. Probably more on the technology side, like for example, the things we saw on Battery Day, right, or Autonomy Day. You know, so the the 4680 cells, I think were sandbagged. I think that they're going to be able to produce those very, very cheaply, and I think that the manufacturing capabilities of Tesla are probably the least appreciated. Like, people talk a lot about autonomy, and autonomy is probably the biggest thing the biggest play they have. But so it's the machine that builds the machine. It's actually the machine that builds the machine that builds the machine. The expertise behind building these factories. They're going to build factories for lots of different products. You know, air conditioning units, and just like they're going to build. They're going to get so good at building things. And you know, there's a lot of products that they're going to be able to manufacture far cheaper than anyone else. So yeah, I think the manufacturing capabilities of Tesla are going to be extraordinary. Like, they already are, but that to me is really impressive, especially with the high pressure, you know, injection casting that they're doing. Thinking really creatively about how do we minimize the steps involved in the manufacturing process. How can we expand from a 2D model to like 3-dimensional, you know, optimizing the yield of manufacturing to use as much of the factory as possible, going up into 3 dimensions, right? Like,
and increasing the velocity.
Yeah, the velocity, things like that. Who else is doing this? Like, nobody's doing this, right?
I'm sorry for going on a tangent. I may ask you about this more later, but did you see Lucid Motors' recent video inside the factory?
I did, yeah.
I watched it and I was like, why is everything moving so slow? Wait, why are you using more humans instead of more robots? You know, just like, I might make a video picking that apart, but it's only like 2.5 minutes long. I don't know if I have enough material to make a whole video on it. But, you know, I definitely feel that you see Elon talk about using maximizing use of the volume in a
Yeah.
factory space and maximizing the velocity, increasing the velocity of things coming out.
Yeah,
And like, did you see the Sandy Munro interview with Elon Musk?
I did. Yeah.
So there's this moment where they're talking about, and I have a video about this, which isn't linked below, but it's in my channel, this video about the next generation Gigafactory that Munro's asking him about it. And Elon says, well, we're not really going to worry about the next factory until we get Berlin and Texas up and running. And I realized they're not building another factory. Like Berlin and Texas are like the current generation of factory. There's another generation of factory coming where they're going to do more of optimizing the volume of the factory, where they're going to do more about accelerating the speed of that they do things in the factory.
Yep.
And I feel like there's going to be like a factory day, a year from now, and we're going to see, whole frame casting and 48 volt wiring, and there's going to be a couple of it, but there's going to be like 5 things we hadn't even thought of. That they've got some new innovations, and you're just going to go, because like Battery Day, when they said the tabless architecture, no one saw that coming. No, 4680, we kind of had a hunch it was a bigger cell. Okay,
and it's crazy. It's like, people just think that this innovation is just going to stop. Like, it's not going to stop. I mean, they're going to continue. Like, they're going to push the envelope so hard. I mean, and just continue. Like, this isn't even the last generation of battery. They're going to continue to build more cells. No, I just think that I wouldn't say they're just beginning with manufacturing, but they have a lot more. I think Elon wants to, like, we're going to someday see a video of a car being manufactured. Like in a few minutes.
Right, it's gonna be a YouTube video. Here's how we made a car. 10 minutes. It's done.
I'll just watch the whole thing, and it's just gonna be mind blowing. Like, I think that will happen, right? Like, we'll see a car being made in 5-10 minutes or something right in front of us, and
right,
and then there are gonna be some mind blowing demos. I think that's.
I feel like that when I watch the Outsiders, because the thing I wanted to talk about was I think you and I both see a lot of the same things, but there's these people outside our world. There's the Wall Streeters or whoever that just don't see it. So manufacturing's a big one, the 4680 cell, and I always love asking people, well, how many cells do you think they're going to make in 2022? How many cells do you think they're going to make in 2030? And they just have no idea what I'm talking about. And I think self-driving is a big part of it. It's actually more about AI than it is about self-driving, but if you listen to Andre Karpathy talk about it, Jim Keller and Elon talk about that, I feel like the Wall Streeters just are placing zero value on FSD.
Yeah.
They literally, if you look at their analysis, they're like, well, this is how many cars they sold, and this is their growth rate, or this is what they're going to sell next year. And it's all about cars. And to me, like, even if you say, okay, there's only a 10% chance they're going to develop this FSD thing and make it work. Well, then you got to add 10% to the valuation for what is the Robotaxi network worth if it works. And they're just like, well, we don't think it's going to happen, so we're not going to value it. And then you get like Cathie Wood. Like, it's funny, I read the Cathie Wood report, the ARK Invest report, and I'm like, what? I felt like, how did you guys miss this? Because they talked about it, but they massively undervalued the Robotaxi network to me, and they had some other quirks with their model. I love them. Don't get me wrong. I love them. I invest in ARK. That's one of my other investments is ARK Invest, the ARKK fund. But when you talk about the machine that builds the machine that builds the machine, it's sort of like, okay, once you have this manufacturing expertise, what else could you manufacture? Like, in all my efforts to value Tesla, because I make models and everything, I've never modeled what happens when they make an HVAC.
Yeah.
Right? Because
what happens when somebody creates a monopoly on manufacturing? Like, literally nobody can manufacture anything cheaper than they can, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've never seen that before. So I think I was going to say something, but
well, is it that they form a manufacturing consulting business, or do they just go into? I could see it where they just provide manufacturing consulting services. That's the other thing, by the way. Elon mentioned, and I didn't think about this until he said it. Dojo is going to make FSD. It's going to be this AI training supercomputer, fastest one in the world, and it's going to train FSD. And there's going to be a point, which I think is in 2022, if not the end of 2021, probably sometime in 2022, where Dojo's basically done its job. that FSD is 10 times better than the best human or 20 times better than the best human. It's like, yeah, there's some room for additional improvement, but if you've gone from 40,000 traffic deaths a year in the United States to 10, right? We did pretty good. You know, we still want to get rid of those 10, but we done pretty damn good, right? There's a certain point where like, okay, we've accomplished that. What do you do with that AI training supercomputer after it's done that job? And how big is that market? And Kathy Wood in the Big Ideas PDF that they came out with, AI training is going to be a big industry. Well,
it is.
And, you know, Dojo is probably going to be the first generation, right? They'll build another Dojo.
The biggest industries are in the future, I think, in this decade are AI, blockchain, crypto, quantum computing, and maybe genomics. So those are, and AI is by far, I think, the biggest one. You know how, you know, I think Mark Andreessen would say, I don't know how to pronounce.
I don't either.
He would say that software is eating the world, but now AI is eating software.
Yeah.
So you know, whatever company can leverage AI the most to generate revenue is the company that's going to dominate in AI, and then they're going to use the AI for other things. It's a general thing. I mean, it's not something where people have to write specific code for specific industries.
Right.
It's general. These are very generalizable solutions that you can use to solve all kinds of problems. So it's kind of like winner take all. Like whoever masters AI and is able to leverage it the most to generate useful services, products and services, they're going to use that in other areas. So the AI that, you know, the Dojo system with the inference chips in the car and the training Dojo, like that mechanism is going to it'll be used for other types of robots or other types of systems. Like it's not going to be limited to self-driving. They're going to use it for many types of many areas. So I think they're going to generalize it, maybe offer Dojo as a service or and yeah, that's going to be a huge, I think, revenue driver at some point. They have the in-house expertise with AI and machine learning. I mean, they're going to find other ways to make money with that.
Yeah. Let me just for those who did, you and I, sometimes I think you and I might speak inside baseball, even though you're more inside than I am. This concept of software eating the world and then AI eating software. Those who don't know, there's sort of ordinary code where you type lines of code and you tell the computer what to do in this situation and that situation. And the notion of AI, what's technically probably better called machine learning or neural network programming, is rather than a human telling the computer what to do, you expose the computer to situations and you teach it this is what's important, and the computer goes through these situations again and again and learns, basically optimizing some sort of equation. Okay, if I did it this way, I got better results. If I did it this way, I got better results. And you could throw simulations at it, and ultimately you can throw it in the real world, which Tesla's doing with its cars, and it can start to do better and better at things. And at a certain point, it becomes more efficient to have the AI write software to teach computers what to do than to have humans write software to tell the computers what to do. So there's this world of software out there, and before machine learning was significant, everything 100% of software was human coded, and then machine learning started getting better at this and started cutting it on this area, and human coders had to go do something else, and it's gradually encroaching on more and more areas of software. And then of course software is permeating our world. You know, you go back to when I was a kid, software was, you know, a very, very small part of our world. Now software is we're using it right now, like in all kinds of ways, right in this conversation. So I just want people to get that. So other things in the future, somebody asked about this in the chat, and it's a good point to ask about. What do you think about Tesla energy in the future? Where's that going?
Yeah, I think the energy market is even bigger than the entire transportation sector, I believe. So that's just a pure TAM play. Like that's just like, I mean, if I think that, for example, look at PG&E in California. They have power lines and infrastructure that's more than 50 years old. All this, and it's causing fires. Like there's a lot of issues with our energy infrastructure, and not to mention the people running the show. The people running these companies are incompetent. They don't want to change anything. They're just there for a paycheck or whatever. Like there's no innovation happening. I think the longer an industry has existed, and the more mature it gets, and it doesn't really allow new entrants to come in and disrupt. And here comes Tesla with their batteries and their and their solar and everything. I think they're just going to. It's going to take many years, right, for this disruption to happen. But I think ultimately, like, it could be bigger than transportation. I don't think it'll be bigger than.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think it'll be bigger than Robotaxi, but it's going to be probably like the number 2 revenue item.
Right.
I think. I'm not sure about that, but it's going to be, it'll be massive. It might actually overtake Robotaxi initially, but then Robotaxi will catch on. I think one thing about Robotaxi is that I personally believe it's going to take longer than people realize, but it's going to go to a place that nobody can imagine. Like, I think it'll be underestimated or overestimated in the short run, but dramatically underestimated in the long run. That's the way Elon's businesses work. That's the way Jeff Bezos worked. It's just these companies. Whenever you have people like this, like Elon or Bezos, whatever they do, it just takes a long time, right? And people they'll make promises or have unrealistic expectations in the short run, but in the long run, they'll just blow everything away. Like that'll happen it's happened with Tesla, right? And it will happen with all the industries, all the businesses that Tesla is running. So I think the Robotaxi thing will take longer than we think.
What do you think are the hurdles that are going to make it hard to get Robotaxi bigger?
I think it's just a long tail of edge cases.
So you're not talking about the Robotaxi network. You're talking about actually getting self-driving working.
Self-driving working. I'm talking about the actual driving capabilities of it. I know that we say we're really close and everything, but there's just such a long tail of edge cases that I think will need to be worked out. And then I hope I'm wrong on that, right? But like, I know Robotaxi works really great in Palo Alto, for example. But not everywhere looks like Palo Alto. And that also tells me maybe there's some human annotations or a lot of human work went into making Palo Alto Palo Alto be a lot of human work may have gone into making Palo Alto a smooth FSD experience, right? But in other parts of that's not scalable, right? You can't.
Well, FSD has seen more edge cases in Palo Alto because there's a lot more Teslas in Palo Alto than there are in Kansas.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of like, how many cars can they get on the road? How much training data can they get? And I mean, I'm a little bit cautious on like the timing, but I think ultimately, I think I'm more bullish on even some of the most bullish people with FSD. I think it's going to be like used not just for the technology is going to be used for all kinds of things. Yep. Cars, trucks, it'll be used for anything that moves.
Right, robots. There's a theory that the Robotaxi will pick up your food at the restaurant, bring it to your house, and a robot will hop out of the car and bring your food to the door and ring the bell.
Yeah, why not?
And the robot will be using roughly the same. There's some additional challenges for the robot in perceiving the environment that the cars don't face, because maybe there's more edge cases when you're walking, or different edge cases when you're walking than there are when you're driving. But
yeah, exactly.
But let me ask you this question. So this is an argument I frequently have with people. I believe that once the full self-driving works and the Robotaxi network goes live, it will stop making sense for Tesla to sell cars. And I'll just say that there's two reasons for this. One reason is profit, and the other reason is the mission. The mission is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. A Tesla-owned Robotaxi will operate roughly 18 hours a day. A privately owned Tesla, let's say I buy a Tesla, I might operate at 6 hours a day on average. The average private owner is more likely to operate it as a Robotaxi, or operate at total 6 hours a day rather than 18 hours a day. So a Tesla-owned Robotaxi will accelerate the transition to sustainable transport 3 times faster than privately owned Robotaxis. So that's one theory. And the other theory is just plain and simple. The profit story on an 18-hour-a-day Robotaxi is absolutely insane. Like, I just had this conversation. You interviewed with Dave Lee. I just had this conversation with Dave Lee, and he talked me down. I shouldn't say this. He talked me down to his bear case that it'll only be a $7.5 trillion market cap on Robotaxi alone. in 2030, which is like way below my actual number for Robotaxi if they follow that path. So do you have a sense, because Elon has said it, well, at some point we're going to stop selling cars. Okay, we won't stop selling cars, but the price will raise to the clearing price, which will be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Where do you come down on this idea that maybe they just operate their own fleet?
Yeah, I think they'll do both. I think they'll have their own fleet, but there'll be people that are going to be able to buy Teslas. They'll be more expensive, but some people will still be able to buy them, and economically it'll make sense to buy them, either because they drive a lot, or because maybe they just want the convenience of having their own car and being able to put their own stuff in their car. But I don't think Tesla will fully ever stop selling cars to consumers. I think they'll get more expensive. Yeah. I might be wrong. I don't know. I think that Tesla will. Oh yeah. So in 2015, I wrote a paper. When I was doing research on Tesla, I wrote a 50-page document. It could have been an ebook, actually. I was looking at it the other day. I spent a whole week on researching this convergence of EVs, autonomous robotaxis, so EVs, robotaxis, and what was the other one? I totally forgot. But that convergence between those, and I looked at the cost per mile and everything, and I just convinced myself that this was a massive opportunity. So that was part of my that was part of the reason why I continued to buy shares, is because I did that research and wrote this massive document on the prospects of this. So it was kind of like ARK Invest type of report. Right. But yeah, I did this many years ago. I still have it. I could probably share it with you.
So
yeah.
So somebody asks, what makes, I'll say it this way. Somebody asks, what makes 4680 batteries, quote, uncopyable by other battery makers? And I don't think that's the right way of thinking about it, but how would you respond to that question?
Uncopyable? I don't think it's uncopyable. I think that they can other makers will be, I think it's the manufacturing process that's going to be difficult for them to build out. It'll take probably some time. Because I think that the engineers that designed that were the Groman.
Yeah.
I think there's the Groman people, right?
I thought it was I think it was Maxwell. Maxwell? Sorry, Groman does the manufacturing. Maxwell does the cathode, dry cathode. Yeah.
Okay, so both, right? So they, whatever other companies want to develop 4680 cells, they need to hire that expertise. So maybe they can figure it out themselves, but I don't think it's uncopyable. I think eventually unless there's some patent issues.
Right. Well, certainly somebody can make a 46 millimeter diameter. For those who don't know what we're talking about, we're talking about the 4680 cell. This is a mock-up by Fred Jessup. And it has this tabless thing here. It makes the cell work better without going into too much specifics. So I actually think that Tesla is already licensing their 4680 technology to LG Chem and Panasonic. And the deal is this: we will teach you how to make these cells, but you have to sell us every one you make until we can't until we stop buying, until you produce more than we can use. And that's, and we're going to give you a good margin, right? We're going to give you a 20-25% margin. So, your LG Chem, your Panasonic, wait a minute. We can make as many as we can make, and you're going to give us a 20 or 25, which I think the margin in the battery industry is probably closer to 10 or 15%. We're going to give you an outsized margin. Just make as many of these as you can, and we'll buy as many as you can make. And, it's funny, in the reason I'm responding to the comments a little bit, people are like, well, anybody could do the 4680 cells. Like, yeah, but there's no other customers for a 4680 cell yet. Volkswagen just announced their big plan, and it's prismatic cells. And I don't know what GM Ultium is, but it's not 4680. So who else is going to use 4680 cells? So sorry. So Tesla's future. I wanted to talk about this. We talked about AI training. We talked about energy. I'm trying to think if there was something else I wanted to ask you about. Well, HVAC. We sort of talked about HVAC a little bit. I have this. We're going to talk about be like Elon at the end, but I feel like what Elon does is he sees an industry that hasn't advanced. I actually wanted to take a quick step back. You mentioned internal combustion engine, and I wanted to say this. I drive a Volkswagen Passat. I don't have a Tesla yet. I have a Cybertruck order. I was one of the early Cybertruck orders. Did you order a Cybertruck?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I probably
Yeah.
should.
But it's late now.
It's I know. I know. I heard. I was listening to David Lee's interview with
Yeah.
Matt, and that was kind of. I was like, damn, I should get a couple of
I talked to a guy who ordered 130.
Wow. It's what is that, $100
Yeah.
deposit?
It's like, well, it's a put, right? You always get the money back.
It's like a
call option. It's a call option.
Yeah.
And if it works and you can buy 130 Cybertrucks and run your own Robotaxi fleet, you're making $50,000 a year on 130 vehicles. That's pretty good money. So I ordered one. And I ordered a second one before the FSD went from when the FSD was still 8,000, was about to go to 10,000. I ordered a second one just for the heck of it. But I didn't feel the need to order 130. I don't want to be in that business. I didn't want to play that game. But so, that's what I wanted to ask you. So we talked about getting the cost of the vehicle down to maybe 15 or 20,000, and I think it might actually go further. And I don't know if you've seen me talk about this, but I have this vision for the future of a single passenger, what I call a pod car, where it seats one. It's like people are like, well, it should seat two. No, it seats one. Stop interfering with my vision. It seats one. And the reason for this is something like 80% of trips taken are one person. It's either one person driving in their own car or one person passenger in an Uber, Lyft, taxi, whatever. That there's one person who's trying to get from point A to point B. They're traveling alone. So you could address roughly 80% of the human transportation market with single passenger vehicles. And the cost of making them would be a lot less. They would be more efficient. And if you did it right, you could make them half as wide and half the length of an existing car. And in the future, that means you're going to use a lot less road space. So you double or quadruple the carrying capacity of the roads if 80% of the vehicles are 3 feet wide by 6 feet long or 8 feet long or whatever. I don't know how long the existing cars are. There's something like, they're more than 10 feet long, the average car. The average car is like probably 15 feet long. So does that idea sound crazy to you?
No, I think, and I think when I talked about like Tesla's going to demo maybe on manufacturing day, the manufacturing of a car like before our eyes, in 10 minutes or something, it could be that Model 2 or that, the small compact one-seater car. Yeah. Maybe they'll show how quickly they can make that thing, and it'll be awesome.
Right.
That's pure speculation. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, it can't be single. It can't be that small yet because Elon wants the cars to be safe. And if you get hit by a human driver in an SUV, you're going to be dead, no matter how crash-worthy they make a small car. Right. So, they still have to be crash-worthy, and they still have to be able to survive reasonably well in a collision with some bad human driver.
I think it'll be two-seaters. I think it'll be a two-seater car with a little bit of space for some cargo. They'll make.
Okay.
That would be a great Robotaxi vehicle.
Yeah. I still think the next one's going to be a 4-seater or 5-seater, but it's sort of wonder, like when I do my modeling, I know you don't do modeling, I do modeling, and I model out and I picture the next generation of Gigafactory making, this is, again, sorry folks, this is Warren talking crazy. I picture the next generation of Gigafactory, the one that comes after Berlin and Austin. I think they'll actually be built in Berlin. I think that the next generation factory will be built in Berlin, Austin, and Shanghai, because Elon likes locating things in places where engineers want to be. And if those are the places that they liked in the first place, well, they're going to want to be there again. But as I see it, the Models 3 and Y factories in Berlin and Austin are going to be spitting out total 2 million cars a year between 3 and Y together. So the next generation factory is going to be producing a higher volume model. I think they're going to be producing 4 million vehicles a year out of each one, right? So this is a 2020. This is where I start to get crazy and people start to say, "Oh, there goes Warren." But you take the next generation of Gigafactory, which is going to be 1 gigapress to produce the entire chassis, plus structural battery pack, 48-volt wiring, other innovations that I'll ask you about in a second. I see them spitting out 4 million of these a year in each one, which is 12 million across three gigafactories. And then you've got the roughly 6 million that the other factories that already exist are producing. And you've got 18 million vehicles a year. And I think that's 2025. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying I could totally see that happening. I don't know if the battery supply will be there to supply that many vehicles in 2025. I think it will be, especially with CATL. I don't know if you saw CATL is expecting to produce 1.2 terawatt hours of lithium iron phosphate cells by 2025. Did you see that number?
I didn't see
I
that.
mean, so people are upset. Like when I talk about the battery thing, people think I'm just talking about Tesla's batteries, but we know they're going to keep using CATL. Like Tesla has no plans to make iron phosphate cells, right? So if CATL scales up and LG Chem scales up and Panasonic scales up, it's not just the, let's say, 500 gigawatt hours of batteries that Tesla's producing at that point. It's actually their suppliers are producing more. Like my models all assume that Tesla buys the same amount from its suppliers that it produces, but their suppliers could be contributing twice as many. So does my 18 million, does my 4 million out of each, like Tesla compact Gigafactory and 18 million vehicles in 2025, does it sound as crazy as it sounds to most people? Does it sound crazy to you?
No, I don't think anything like. I think people aren't really. If you were to go back to 2013 and say and ask me if I thought Tesla would be where it's at today, I would say no. I didn't. I wouldn't. You know, like I think this company is just continuously underestimated, and nobody's going to get it right. Like they're going to pull so much shit this decade that people are going to be like all of us are wrong.
Yeah.
If you have a model that goes out 10 years, it's just going to be wrong. Like they're going to announce new products and new. They're going to have far more breakthroughs.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about just breakthroughs. Like I'm talking about breakthroughs with like material science and chemistry, like really foundational things that just completely changed the game. I'm not talking about like a breakthrough as being a new car model or something like that. It's the far more fundamental things that they're going to optimize. So
let me address something from the chat. Somebody wrote this: if Tesla's producing 4 million cars per factory, it would be half the price cars with less margin. Yes, except they're going to produce cars for 20,000 and sell them for 25,000. So that's still a 25% margin, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's a 20% margin, and that doesn't count FSD. Right? If the FSD is $100,000 or $200,000, then the margin's insane. So I think the value of the Robotaxi isn't being able to carry 5 passengers and go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. The value of the Robotaxi is being able to deliver a ride at a reasonable price. And so it's not, people get caught up in that. So I just wanted to address that one because I think I get comments like that a lot. So
yeah.
All right, so let's do a couple other things about Tesla's future, like crazy ideas for more, and I want to bounce off you. A lot of people think that at some point Tesla's going to drop the mirrors to get better aerodynamics. They're going to drop the mirrors. They're going to use the cameras. Do you think that do you think that regulators will allow that to happen?
Yeah, I do. I think eventually they'll allow that to happen. As soon as, as long as Tesla can prove that it's safe, and I think they will, they're going to have some kind of thing sticking out, maybe some cameras,
right?
But
a lot better aerodynamically.
Yeah, a lot better aerodynamically.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so then one of my bigger ideas that people think is crazy. This is about manufacturing. One of the goals in manufacturing, you're building the machine that builds the machine. If the machine you're building is easier to build, then the machine that's building it can operate faster, can operate more efficiently, fewer processes, etc. So when I look at a modern car, the windows are like this huge complication in manufacturing a car. The windshield, the windows, the rear window. There's all this glass. You have to build structure to support the glass. You have to make the glass structural in some ways. You have to do all these things. And I have this vision that they stop putting windows on cars. That they basically, make the car, sheet of steel or whatever. I've taken it to another level. Like just a minute today when I was thinking about this. What if you didn't get in and out on the sides? What if the door was in the back, right? And you were able to walk in to the car and get to your seat without having to get it. So you didn't have doors in the side anymore. You had the door in the back, right? So because you could then make the vehicle more aerodynamic and you could make it much easier to build if you didn't have doors in the sides and you didn't have windows. And people are like, what do you mean not have windows? And there's two criticisms of windows. One is, well, I want to be able to see outside. Well, you just put LCD flat panels in, and wouldn't that be more expensive? No, LCD flat panels are a lot cheaper than auto glass. LCD flat panels have gotten really cheap.
I think you're onto something. I think we all have this idea of what a car is supposed to look like, and that's what the car. It was designed that way a long time ago, and just never revisited. I mean, we got these windows. We can roll up and down the windows, and there's really no reason why a car should stay should remain that way. And they're going to use first principles and kind of rework the car. I think you're right. I think they're going to remove the side windows. Maybe they'll just have one flat top window that could be easy to manufacture and just drop on.
Right.
And entering from the back makes sense. Just having a big door, people can come in and out.
Right.
You can have a robot go in and out easily, maybe a ramp or something. Yeah, that just it makes sense. I don't think you're crazy at all.
Because if you eliminate the side doors, then I think you make the car a lot more aerodynamic if the door's in the back. But the other thing is like, well, I want to see outside. Well, you can set the LCD to show you what's outside. Or you can set the LCD to play an immersive video game. Or you can set the LCD to watch a movie. Or you can set the LCD to like feel like you're going through hyperspace. And especially if you're going through a boring company tunnel, right? You don't need to see outside. And then other people are like, well, I want to be able to roll down the window, get fresh air. It has a ventilation system. You know, it'll probably have a kick-ass ventilation system if you want it.
Yeah. So. And there'll be different modes. Like if you have one big window on the top, you'll be able to control the light that comes through the window. You can have there's some I don't know how it works, but you can actually change the tint of glass. So if you want to play video games or something, maybe you want to make it all dark. If you want to watch Netflix or something, but if you just want to enjoy the daylight, it's a nice day outside, you can control the light that comes in the vehicle. I think they'll do things like that.
And then I have this other vision for a few, which Elon mentioned in the master plan part 2 or part 2, minibus. And he had this idea of improving the aerial density. I think he's eliminating the driver, he's eliminating the space where you step in, and he's eliminating the aisle. So he's maximizing the number of people that can fit in this thing. And I picture it being on the roughly on the Cybertruck dimensions of width and length. And like for Americans, because we're all big and fat, squeeze 20 of us in there comfortably. But you go to poorer countries, which is one of the things I think a lot of people who follow Tesla don't think about as well. How is this? Like, people are like, well, when's Tesla going to go to India? It's like, well, when they make a $10,000 car. Because Indians don't buy $20,000 cars. They don't. You know, the cheapest Tesla car on the future vision is a $25,000 car, and that's, you know, the base price, right? It's going to be hard to sell that. You're not going to be able to sell that in volume in India. And if you had a Gigafactory spinning out 4 million of them a year, you'd only be able to sell 100,000 of them in India. Where are you selling the rest of them? So I actually think if you can deliver a minibus that is reasonably efficient on a cost per mile for the bus, but in India you can cram 40 people in there, because I don't know if you've ever seen what Indian public transportation's like. They will cram in. They'll ride on the top of the thing. Yeah. You could probably get the cost per passenger mile well below a penny, right? And now you're going 100 miles for $1. Right, which sounds like nothing to us, but to somebody, you know, like if I had a 100-mile trip and it cost me $5, I'd be thrilled, right? That's still a good deal. But if I want to go from South Florida to New York City, you know, that's a lot of money. But if now you get me down to 5 cents a mile, which is where I think it might head in the United States, right? 5 cents a mile times 1,000 miles is $50. Wait, I can go to New York City for $50 from South Florida? Yeah. Holy cow! So have you thought about this concept of a minibus, maybe a van format for the same thing? Do you have any thoughts on that idea?
Yeah, no, I think it'll look a lot like what we just described. You know, it's not going to look like your typical bus. It's not going to have the 4 windows you can roll up and down electronically. There'll be some, you know, you'll be able to control the light that comes in. There'll be a nice big window somewhere. Maybe you go in on one side of it. It's not going to have all these doors. I think it'll have, you know, it might be like a general purpose kind of model where they'll use it for both public transportation, but also transporting packages or something. Maybe they'll use the same chassis, the same kind of, might be more modular. You know, I'm not sure about that, but yeah, no, I think, and the cost per mile thing is interesting, because the number 2 expense for people is transportation, is, you know, getting from one, especially, you know, if they own a car or something. Yeah. It's like the number 2 thing. The number 1, it might even be the number 1 depending on the rent or mortgage situation. It's a legitimate, you know, it's like one of the biggest things that people spend money on, and that's why I'm so passionate about Tesla. So I feel like it has so much opportunities, because it's literally the largest expense item. One of the largest expense items that people have is, you know, transportation. Yeah. And so you know, that ties in the size of the TAM. And the biggest one is housing. So I think Tesla is going to get into housing at some point, maybe later in the later half of this decade. Yeah, no, I think they could end up buying huge plots of land and using boring tunnel bricks or something
Yeah.
to housing. That's a cool opportunity, but
Yeah.
who knows?
I'm actually going to ask you about that a little bit later. That's in my Be Like Elon topic. I want to talk about that. So, I have the theory. We'll get there then. So I wanted to move on. We've talked about Tesla's future a bit, and I want to move on to the next topic, which is being a Teslanaire. You and I are both, I'll confess right now, I own over $1 million in Tesla stock. I've never said that before, but I own over $1 million. You own a bit more than me. For a lot of people, they go through life and they're worried about how they're going to pay their next check, their next rent check, or their next mortgage payment. And I've been there. Even recently, we've struggled with making mortgage payments. My Tesla stock's sort of untouchable, right? So, like, that's over there. No, we're not touching that. And it's actually in retirement accounts, so we're not supposed to touch it. Mostly in retirement accounts. So,
yeah.
I have this part in my investing, my 10 tips for investing video. I have this idea that you're trying to achieve a certain number, and once you achieve a certain number, then you have a set amount of money that you could live off of. So, like, really simple. Let's suppose you had $1 million saved up, and you weren't like a Tesla nut, right? You had $1 million invested in something responsible, and you invested in something you thought would grow 5% a year. Well, then you could take 5% a year of the money and live off of it, right? Because if it's going to grow 5% a year and you take 5% a year, you're basically treading water, staying even. And if you're lucky and you invest well and it grows faster, then your pile grows. I called it build a pile. That what you're trying to do from a young age is you start putting a little bit of money aside, a little bit more money aside, live a little cheaper, make the coffee at home, don't buy Starbucks, if you save, like I drink, Perrier, like I buy Perrier and Pellegrino at BJ's Wholesale Club, right? And I pay like 60 cents a bottle. Instead of buying a $5 Starbucks, I don't know what Starbucks costs because I don't drink coffee that much. But instead of spending $5 at Starbucks for my luxury is I drink a bottle of Perrier for 60 cents. If you can find ways of feeling like you're living a good lifestyle while spending less money, then you save that money and you can invest it and you can build a pile. And you're buying assets. Some of it's the asset is this house, right? You're building up different assets.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to a certain point, and let's say you have $1 million. Well, now you can 5% of that is 50,000. You can live on 50,000 a year. If you get to 2 million, it's 100,000. If you can get to 5 million, that's 250,000 a year you can spend. There's some taxes involved or whatever, but if you can't be comfortable on 250,000 a year, you're doing something wrong, right? And then you get to 10 million, it's $500,000 a year. So you have more than that. You have in the ballpark of 10 million. Right? I don't know exactly what it measures today. Well, it's going to go up tomorrow, right? Monday, Monday we're expecting it to go up with the latest news. Although with Wall Street, we never know. But do you look at it that way at all? That I have this much money sort of saved up, I can spend this much now. Do you borrow against it, or do you just? I don't think you're selling Tesla stock, right?
No.
So how do you do it?
Yeah. So it's funny. Yeah, I don't plan on selling any of my Tesla stock. And even though I am retired, so it's like, how am I living? What am I using to pay my bills? Well, I'm borrowing against my shares. Currently, I'm with Fidelity, and so what that means, I'll back up, is for the audience, like you probably know, but once you have some stock, you can actually, instead of selling that stock instead of selling stock so you can kind of buy everyday things and support your lifestyle, you can just borrow against it. You can take a margin loan out, and a margin loan is just a loan where your stock is used as collateral. And typically these margin loans they don't need to be paid down. That's interesting. It's not like a mortgage payment or auto loan payment where you have to every month pay it off or something, or pay a certain amount. There's no payments. It's just that the debt, the interest accrues in your account and builds up. And as long as you maintain a certain percentage of equity, then you do not have to pay any of it down.
If you borrow too much and it comes too close to how much assets you have, you get a margin call and you have to start selling assets.
You get a margin call and you got to sell. That's painful.
But right now you're nowhere close to that, right?
Nowhere close to that. Yeah. I max at a loan to value of about 8%, meaning I borrow about $80,000 for every $1 million in marginable securities I have. So. Yeah. So I keep it around the 8% value, and I calculated that based on how much I can expect Tesla to drop without having to sell my shares. So I can handle like an 80% Tesla drop. Right now I can probably go down maybe another 40% or something like that. But yeah, so I have this calculation where, as long as Tesla doesn't go down by more than 80%, I don't have to sell any shares to cover my margin loan. And I'm also so there's this notion of maintenance. So you have a percentage that you know of your stock that you have to maintain as far as equity is concerned. So 50% maintenance means 50% of your portfolio has to be equity, and you can only borrow up to 15%. 50% of that the stock you own. I'm getting right now 40% maintenance with Charles Schwab at a 1.3% 1.3% interest rate.
Oh.
So I can borrow. So I can borrow up to 60%. So I can borrow $600,000 for every $1 million in Tesla stock I have at 1.3%. I can borrow it.
Does that create the perverse incentive that you think about borrowing money and buying more Tesla stock?
So I learned this lesson a long time ago. So I do not want to buy any Tesla stock or any securities with borrowed funds. And the reason why is because it's very addictive. It's like when you buy something and Tesla's going down and down, you want to buy more Tesla. And you get to a point where like, well, should I do this or not? Should I continue, tickling the dragon's tail? Like, it's just like, you kind of get to a point where you end up overextending and borrowing too much just because you see the opportunity and you're like, I just want to buy more, like this stock is so cheap, and you end up getting in over your head, and the stock can go down even more than you realize, and then you get margin calls.
Right.
So that's what happened to me in 2018, where you just have to be extremely disciplined if you do that. And for me, that just means not buying any securities at all on margin. I believe that just living off of margin, my expenses aren't going to grow by that much. I live off of a certain amount every month.
Right.
But if you're buying stock or buying equities on margin, there's really no cap to that. There's no natural cap. You're just like free to buy as much stock as you can. And if you're not disciplined, you can get in over your head and get margin called. So for me personally, I don't believe in it. Maybe some people can control themselves, but I can't.
Right.
I ended up getting. I lost a couple thousand Tesla shares in 2018 from margin calls because I was borrowing too much, and so I just learned that lesson, and I won't do it anymore.
Right. Yeah, we all learn lessons the hard way sometimes.
Yeah.
So I have never bought on margin. I still people are like wondering, well, Warren, how did you buy more stock when you were already so heavy in? It's like, well, I have different things going on in my accounts where all of a sudden I have more cash, right? Mm-hmm. And then I've got the cash in the account. I'm like, well, what am I going to do with it? Well, there's only one stock. I shouldn't say, when I have free cash, it's like, well, I'm not going to hold cash. And I did at one point make a play on. I have this belief that the Robotaxi network is going to happen sooner than I think you think. And if I basically bought put options, 2-year put options on Uber and Lyft. And this was not a big bet, right? This was just like, all right, I keep seeing people on Twitter talking about options. I've avoided the options strategy, but I put a fairly small amount in buying options on Uber, put options on Uber, which means if Uber and Lyft go bankrupt or go to near zero by the end of 2022, then I basically make 20x what I invested. Okay. Nice. Now, if I lose, if it doesn't happen, then I lose. Most likely I lose all of the investment, but it's a fairly small investment, so I'm not worried about it. I like playing, but it was almost sort of like, all right. And do you hear people talking about buying call options, or there's all these talks about buying options? So I feel like the options market is like more complicated than I want to think about. Like, I'm comfortable. I bought Tesla stock. It's 10x'd from where I bought. My cost basis is around 75. It was 68, but then it was 65, but I bought more. So my cost basis was 65. It's 10x from where I was. It's probably going to 10x from my current cost basis, at this point. I don't feel like I would need to play the game of getting into options, because there's a short term effect on playing options. But what are your thoughts? Have you ever thought about buying call options? Was that ever part of your strategy?
So I actually don't believe, it's not that I don't believe in options. I just feel like I would lose money. It's like, I don't think I'm in that elite 1% that actually makes money in the long term, right? Like using derivatives and options. Yeah. I feel like it's a really small percentage of people that actually in the long term even break even. I think that I don't have an advantage. Like I as far as timing, anything temporal, anything involving timing, don't have an advantage. I think there are other people that have access to tools and things that I don't have access to that will just take my money. Like they'll just, I can't predict anything in the short term. I'm much more long term.
Yeah.
So like, for example, Gary Black understands that like he'll open some, uh, position with calls on Monday with Tesla because he knows Monday is the best day to like people like that understand like exactly when to open and close contracts or options. And like there's all kinds of gotchas, and I just feel like at the end of the day, a lot of the people playing with derivatives and stuff, they get their money taken away from them by institutions and advanced traders. And I just feel like you can make money for a while and think you're doing well, and then and you can talk about it on Twitter and say you made this much and YOLO, whatever you want to do, but eventually you're going to lose a lot of that. You're going to return a lot of that to the market, and then you just won't tweet about it or talk about it. It's like, I think that's just,
like very few people come home from the casino talking about how much money they lost. But,
exactly.
But the casinos are always seem to be making money, so somebody's losing money, but nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's funny because like I often get told I'm a perfect use case for using covered calls. But I feel like there's no such thing as a free lunch. Like, sure, that could work for a while, but eventually I'll get those shares called away from me. Like, because who knows? It's really difficult to predict anything with, especially Tesla stock in the short term. I mean, it can turn around and go up. It can double or triple in a few weeks, or it can get cut down to 60% within a month. Like no one really knows. I just feel like it's gambling for me. And you have to constantly stay on top of that stuff. You have to like, it's just it's really like an art.
When I bought those puts, I just decided I'm not even going to look. Like I occasionally notice what they're trading at, but I literally don't look. It was a bet. Like it wouldn't be like there was a moment where I could have sold them with like a 10% gain, but I didn't do it to make 10%. I did it because I was just testing out the idea. What if I did this? What would happen in 2 years? And I kind of want to see how it plays out. Right. I don't really care that much because like I said, it's a small number, right? It wasn't like a big number. I'm just playing with it. All right. So I want to move on. Oh no. So there's a question.
I'll just say one more thing. Sure. These are zero-sum games. So there's always somebody on the other side of that trade.
And that person thinks he's doing a good trade.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just like, what advantage do you have? Like, everyone thinks they're special. Everyone likes to kind of really get their hands dirty and try and overcomplicate things. Sometimes it's best to just think you're not special and step back and like I have an information advantage in that in the long term, I can predict things that other people can't. And so can you. Like, it's easy to see what Tesla is going to be building. Like we're more creative. We're probably more childish and playful minded, right? And that's an advantage when it comes, if you read a lot of science fiction or have an imagination. And like, that is a huge advantage for investing in disruptive companies. Like this childish kind of playful mind is like, that's like gold if you're investing in companies like Tesla. If you can see things others can't see in the long run, if you have some background in engineering or something like that, and you actually see that these things are possible, you understand leverage and software and machine learning, like you have an advantage right there. That's your information advantage. You don't need to trade, just buy as much stock as you can and hold it for like at least a decade, and you'll do better than all these traders. So.
You'll be surprised to hear that there's a lot of people in the chat who think they know more about covered calls, about calls and puts than we do. That we need financial. Somebody just said that you need financial advice. I just want to say, Neil Saxon, you just told a guy who has like $10 million in Tesla stock that he needs financial advice. Let's be clear.
Well, I don't claim to know everything, and maybe it does make sense for me to do it. I just choose not to, and I choose not to worry about it and think about it.
There's a time cost. There's a time cost if you're going to play that game. You got to put a lot of time into figuring out which is the right. Like when I did this with the puts on Uber and Lyft, I was like, look, it's very complicated, these tables, to figure out, well, which option am I going to buy? What's the strike date? What's the strike price? There's a lot of complexity to it, and like I don't want to put that much time into thinking about it. Like that's a cost. That's part of the cost is your time.
Yeah, your time, exactly. Yeah. Like. But yeah, I know, there's one guy I follow on Twitter he's an incredible investor, and he's even told me he's like, Jason, you should use covered calls, and I'm like, and this he's much wealthier than I am. He's done really well with Tesla as well, and so if anything, maybe I should do it, but I just like I don't know. I just don't want to worry about it. And,
Yeah.
you know, I'm fine. You know, I'm content with what I have. I don't need to kind of like push the envelope
Yeah.
more.
No, I mean,
So
I feel like I'm doing okay.
yeah.
So let me move. So I wanted to ask this question though, and this was a question that Henry asked that I thought was a really good question that I meant to get to, and then we got sidetracked. Was what led you to make the decision to retire? That was that's a big jump from just having a lot of stock to all of a sudden, okay, I don't need to work anymore. What, were you
Yeah.
dissatisfied with work? Was it just like, I don't need to do this anymore? Was there something more to it?
Yeah, it wasn't that I was dissatisfied with work. It was a pretty cool job that I had. But I just thought I could do, if you can't use your free time better than you can for your work, you should really kind of like, people who say, you have to always be doing something, or like have people who get bored with retirement, like they have maybe an existential moments, or they think that they're like they're if they can't figure out what to do with themselves in retirement. I think they kind of should think about, like, there's some other things going on there. I'm very curious and I love to learn. I love to read, and I'm never bored.
Yeah.
I'm always doing stuff. So I don't feel like I need to necessarily be doing one thing all day, or even like building a business, or like I can always occupy my time and I enjoy it. I love being able to do whatever I want to do. 40 hours a week, that time is free now.
Yeah.
Even if you have like, yeah. So I think if you're, you know, even if you have one meeting like during the day, like maybe you have nothing going on during the work day and you're working, and you have like a 1 hour meeting at 3 o'clock, your whole day is based around that meeting. Like, it's still, your whole day is controlled. You can't do what you want. You can't just go to Santa Barbara or
Right.
go somewhere that day. You have to stay home for that meeting. Your whole day is taken, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's just that 1 hour work time, there's a lot of noise, like, even if you're not working all the time, you still have to be, you can't do anything else. You're kind of, so the retirement thing, I originally had a retirement goal of like $4 million when I was, by the time I was 46 or something like
Mhm.
that. And like, I don't know how I came up with that number, but I came up with this goal in my early 30s. And then when Tesla broke out, like I tripled,
Right.
that, I destroyed that goal. And so I got to the point where it's like, how much money do I really need?
Right.
Like, what, like, should I just continue working and build up this massive amount of, like, I don't need to work anymore. So
Yeah.
it was a very easy decision. Yeah. And just having free time is amazing. I mean, just being able to do whatever you want. I don't have no regrets. Like,
Yeah.
I can always go back to work if I want to, but I don't see that happening. At least not in the corporate world.
Yeah.
I'll probably start my own thing.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. So just really quick, I want to shout out to Jessica Kirsch, who just said hello in the chat. She said hello to both of us. So hi, Jessica.
Hey, Jess.
So just before I go to the next step, you said you already have, how much money do you need? But if Tesla does what you and I both think it's going to do, you're going to have more than $100 million. So you could borrow a lot more against your margin with that. But do you see your life changing in any particular way compared to how you lived before? Are you buying the McMansion? Are you buying, you already have the great sports car, right? So what, because I struggle with this too, because I live, this is a nice house. We have a pool in the backyard, a lake view. I don't actually have a craving for like a roadster, a fancy car. Do you have sort of like do you feel like your life has changed? Like, if I go on a cruise, I'm going to stay in a nicer room, right? If I go to a hotel, I'm going to stay in a nicer room, but I don't even travel that much. So do you feel like you see material changes in how you live your life because you just have more money? And do you see like it would change more if it 10x's again and you have 100 million?
Yeah, I mean, well, I still have to live on kind of a budget because I'm not selling my shares. I'm living off of margin.
Right.
So I still have a cap. Like, I can't, so like, I can basically live on about 100K a year.
Right.
So I'm kind of living off of that.
And you're in California, which is not the cheapest place to live.
It's not cheap at all.
I still have a mortgage. What part of LA?
I'm living in kind of near Hollywood.
Okay.
Hollywood area, Hollywood Hills.
Okay.
Yeah.
My brother lives near LAX. That's why I ask.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I bought a place. It's got a nice view of the city. It's just like, I couldn't be happier. I don't need to really like I'm all set in terms of my house and my car,
Right.
and I've got, you know, I don't really need to buy a lot.
Right.
If I do get to that $100 million net worth, I mean, if that ever happens, like
Yeah.
I think it could happen, but I'll probably
Just to be clear, folks,
do some
that's the bear scenario. The bear scenario for 2030 is Jason's worth 100. If we follow my scenario, Jason's a billionaire. Just to be clear.
That's so crazy to even think about. I don't even think about that really. Like I kind of try to live in the present and enjoy every day. Oh yeah, I want to talk about goals. This whole notion of having goals of like, I want to retire by this age or have this amount. I kind of don't believe in goals. I believe more that it's better to just do, the right things every day, and then you don't have to really worry about the future. As long as you're every day moving in the right direction, doing the right things, for me, that was just like not selling Tesla stock and buying more every day. I knew that was the right thing to do, and I knew someday it would pay off. I just didn't know when. I continued going to work every day. I did the best I could to get promoted or add value for my customers. Like every day I was doing that. And that was even more important than any long-term goals I had. Long-term goals can be kind of, if you don't have full control over them, it doesn't make sense to have them in some cases. But yeah, back to the $100 million thing. I think I would like to become an angel investor and invest in, philanthropy is great at all. I'll do some philanthropy, but I'm not going to be like Bill Gates and give all of it to. Like, I feel like a better way to use those funds is to invest in promising companies that can have a massive positive social change.
Right.
That's a better way to leverage that money and have a better societal impact.
Right.
And it's actually the best way to grow wealth too.
Right.
So I think I'm going to focus mostly on, like, I have a friend who's an angel investor. I get some tips from him sometimes. Right. And I think that, I would like to do that. I would like to just meet a lot of, companies and invest in the right companies and just kind of help build the next generation of companies at some point, like writing checks for, $500,000 or something here and there. Right. I think that's the best way I could leverage my wealth to create more social impact.
Okay.
Or better.
We're actually going to cover that in the next talk. Before we get there, I just want to tell my retirement story, which my regular audience has probably heard before. But in 2011, I'm an attorney, right? And I had this law firm in Albany, New York, that was reasonably successful. And in 2005, I built a website that was also reasonably successful and started becoming more successful. So 2011, we decided, my wife hates winter. Albany, New York is cold in the winter. I mean, it's cold. It's like colder than you think it is. It's colder than New York City by a lot. So we had been visiting South Florida occasionally, and we decided to move to South Florida. And I basically retired in 2011 at the age of 45. I was making in the ballpark of $200,000 a year without working. Now, the story isn't as rosy as it sounds, because that income from that website started declining a couple of years later. So all of a sudden I had to go back to work. But I found, like, the first year we got here, my kids were going to this elementary school that's like half a mile from my house. I would drop the kids off. I would loop around and go to the golf course across the street from my house. And I would play like 9 holes of golf. And then I would come home and find something to do. And that's sort of like a vision of retired life. And apparently I don't like golf that much. It's not that I don't like golf. It's just that all of a sudden I realized, well, I started finding other things to do. Like you mentioned, startups. There was a group called New Tech Community or something like that. A group of people who were trying to start up businesses. And I started hanging out with those guys, and I started going there more. And I live in West Boca Raton, Florida. I started West Boca News, right? Because that's something I know how to do, is build websites. I bought westbocanews.com. Started reporting what was happening locally. I just kept finding things to do. Apparently, I wasn't made to sit on the back of a yacht or just play golf all day long, even though I really do enjoy playing golf. Like I even when I play bad, I would sit here and say, well, that's better than sitting in front of a computer, typing and argue, because I'm a lawyer, right? It's better than arguing with lawyers on the other side and getting yelled at by judges, right? It was, which happens, unfortunately, for me a lot more than it should. But I just found that I kept finding things to do, that I wasn't built to sit drinks in the back of a yacht. I actually don't even like drinking that much anymore. So I actually see, this is why I want to merge into the next topic, which is, I see kind of like what you said about investing. I feel like if we become successful, if you get to your 100 million, if I get to my 20, 50 million, whatever it is that I fantasize about getting to, there's no yacht that's going to be good enough that I'm going to want to sit on it. And there's no, I'm going to go, I might buy something close to the beach and go for walks on the beach because I like going for walks on the beach, but that's a half hour.
Yeah.
What am I doing for the rest of the day? And for me, I look at Elon, and Elon, he had it, right? He got 180 million when they sold PayPal. He could have bought the yacht. He had the sports car. He could have just lived that life, and he doubled down. Right? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying, I want to be clear about this. I think the goal should be to try to learn from Elon and try to emulate him in some way. I'm not saying you have to do everything he's done. I'm not saying we have to reinvent whole industries and change the world. But can we find small ways to make the world a better place? And it doesn't have to be, you have to be the entrepreneur. Like Elon dove all the way in, 80 hours a week, 100 hours a week, God knows how much time he puts in, all this money in. And he I'm not saying we have to go that far. But can you find something? And you mentioned housing. I wanted to come back to this because I actually think one of the opportunities that Tesla hasn't touched yet, maybe Tesla will go there. I sort of wonder, does Elon have the bandwidth? Is that something that's important enough to him to pursue? But, he's created, whether intentionally or not, he's created a bunch of Teslanaires, right? A bunch of Tesla millionaires. Yeah. And we can learn from him. We can say, all right, what's out there? The Elon model is, let's identify an industry that hasn't innovated a lot. Right. And let's see, where can we get an order of magnitude, a 10x or 100x gain in how this industry works, and can we find something where we can make that kind of difference? And I think housing is one of them. Go ahead.
Hold on, I'll be right back.
Okay. So while he's away, I just want to mention that he talked about the internal combustion engine, reaching its limits of improvement. For those who know, I drive a Volkswagen Passat, which is out of date. I mean, it's not. It's odd for me to own a Volkswagen rather than a Tesla. The timing wasn't right when I needed a car for me to get a Model 3, and I'm waiting on my Cybertruck, so this is the vehicle I have. But my Volkswagen has a 4-cylinder engine that is an evolution of the 4-cylinder engine I had in my 2002 Audi, and they made a lot of improvements. The auto companies did continue making improvements in internal combustion engines all along the way. So I think there's still room to innovate in internal combustion engines, but just going back to Jason's point there's sort of like a limit. They're sort of hitting the asymptote. There's not that much more you can do with internal combustion engines, while we're seeing massive improvement in electric vehicles. So what we're going to talk about next is housing. If you weren't here earlier, Jason started to talk about this idea that he thinks Tesla is going to go into the housing industry, that Tesla will buy big acreages of land and build homes, and I think build boring tunnels to the communities so that people can get from one place to the other. Oh, let me just check. Why don't we, while we're waiting for Jason, let's see what we have in the comments. What do we all think about Starbase? We'll talk about that. Jessica, you have to ask that question again when Jason comes back. He shouldn't have ate all that watermelon, drank all that coffee and beer. That's funny. So thoughts on Dr. Burry's Tesla short? Before we go back to you, Jason, somebody asked thoughts on Dr. Burry's Tesla short. I don't know that he's a doctor. Michael Burry shorted Tesla. I have not seen any explanation for why Michael Burry thinks Tesla's overvalued. I just saw that he shorted it with no explanation. So, and somebody else thinks you ate too much watermelon and drank too much coffee and beer, by the way, Jason. That's so let's go back to this question about housing. Where do you see, let's suppose Tesla's going to innovate in the housing industry. You said something about they're going to buy a bunch of land, they're going to build a bunch of developments and boring tunnels. Can you describe how you see them doing it?
Yeah, I think that I like the idea of just, Tesla buying up lots of land somewhere and just building kind of like a, almost like a, prototype city with where they have a boring company tunnel that goes out to this area, and they can use the bricks to build kind of like almost like Adobe style clay homes that have solar panels and look really kick-ass, kind of stylish homes with garages and power walls or something. Like that's definitely in a green way, like an environmental way. With Starlink, capable homes and everything, like that would be amazing. I mean, how much would it cost to do something like that, right? Yeah. It's
let me take a different spin on that. So what I see is because I'm in addition to being a lawyer, I'm a real estate agent, and I actually am thinking about building what's called, if you check my channel, I have a video about my cyber cabin that I'm planning on building. I'm looking at building a escape cabin, for apocalypse cabin, to escape when the zombie apocalypse takes over. And I look and I see, like, if you want to build a home for yourself, the process is very difficult. It takes a long time. There's a lot of expensive steps along the way. There's a lot of different steps in the process that are expensive. Yeah. And I think that's something where it's not necessarily just about price. Like, my cyber cabin, I think, is going to cost me about $50,000 with not like decked out, like nice interior, just sort of like bare minimum. I think it's going to cost me that. I'm not done with the process of getting it all estimated yet, but it's in that ballpark of $50,000. But that's 1,000 square feet. It's not a particularly it's like a steel building is the idea, and that doesn't include the solar panels on the roof. You know, there's a bunch of other things that are going to go in it, but in the ballpark of 50 grand, that's not that bad for 1,000 square feet. But it's taken a lot of time for me to figure it out. It's not like I can just go somewhere and say, click the button and I have a $50,000 house pop up in 6 weeks. Right. So I feel like there's tremendous potential for somebody to come along and innovate the process of building homes. And it doesn't have to be single family homes. It doesn't have to be cabins. It could be apartment buildings. There's a lot of potential, a lot of different ways for that. And I don't know how much innovation there is already, but I feel like there's a lot that could be done to do this better.
I agree. I think that it's massively expensive to build a house. And I mean, Tesla's kind of converging on the home anyways. If you think about all the products, like, air conditioning, they're going to build air conditioning units someday. They have power walls that go in the home. They have wall connectors. They have solar panels. They've got, there's a lot of technologies that, and Boring Company, they can build bricks, from the holes that they're boring. Right. So they're kind of converging on it. Like they're in the perfect positioning for it. Right.
Do you think like, do you think like, I feel like bricks are labor intensive, but I suppose if you had robots, if you had robots that laid the bricks, then that might solve that problem.
Yeah, this is why, to me, Boring Company is, like, in some ways even more exciting than Tesla. Yeah. I think Tesla's still the best investment, but if I could invest in Boring Company, I would. Yeah. That would be my number 2 investment. I'm working on that idea, right? Even ahead of SpaceX.
I'm working on that idea. I'm still struggling with it, but I may be able to score. I'm working on the idea. That's like, I'm trying to get to the point where I have something that could potentially become a vehicle to invest in Boring Company, and then, maybe I can get in, right? Yeah. I don't know if you've heard my story about Boring Company, how I think it's going to go. I mean, let me tell this really quick. Boring Company is 1 mile of tunnel in Las Vegas, Nevada right now. That is all they've accomplished right now. I mean, there's the tunnel in Hawthorne, but it's basically 1 mile of tunnel in Las Vegas, Nevada. And Las Vegas, they're planning to expand to 30 miles soon, and I think eventually maybe 100 miles of tunnel in Las Vegas. There are 1,000 cities on Earth that are roughly the size of Las Vegas. If all 1,000 cities could probably benefit from 100 miles of tunnel, that's 100,000 miles of tunnel. That's 100,000x where Las Vegas, where Boring Company is now, and that doesn't include intercity tunnels. I don't know if you've heard. Have you heard my boring bearing idea? Because
that's awesome.
The boring bearing idea, for those who haven't heard it, 4 tunnels going up the west coast of the United States, up through Alaska, through the Bering Strait, down through Russia into China. 2 tunnels for cargo containers, for shipping containers. 2 tunnels for Hyperloop. You've eliminated all Pacific shipping and all Pacific air travel, and you've just massively helped the environment. You've massively improved the quality of shipping and the quality of travel, and it only costs $100 billion to build the tunnels. 4 tunnels, 6,000 miles long, works out to, at Boring Company costs, works out to about $100 billion. So I think I'm very excited about Boring Company. Yeah. I'm actually more excited about SpaceX and Neuralink myself, but
yeah. So the cool thing about Boring Company is that, end users, like actual, the business model is where it can be monetized very easily because end users will be paying for those services. Whereas SpaceX is like, sure, they have the best brains, but like their clients are like big businesses and they're more B2B businesses, and then also governments, right? At least initially. I mean, it's I'm not trying to pit one against the other. It's just they're very different business models. Right. And for me, I feel like Boring Company is like has it's significant, has so much potential. I
Right.
mean, yeah, I just
The way here's how I see it. Tesla and the Boring Company make life on this rock better for the humans on the rock, right?
yeah.
SpaceX expands humanity off the rock, right? They could take humanity into space to the stars, and Neuralink expands human consciousness. So for me, SpaceX and Neuralink are the two. I'm still very excited about Tesla and Boring Company. Don't get me wrong. I think Boring Company is the best investment of all of them if we can get in. But from a financial perspective, I don't think the Mars mission is necessarily a good bet as an investment. It's just I want to do it. I want to see it happen. I want to see a Mars colony. I don't know whether it works on an investment perspective. But I want to turn this now to sort of like, let's suppose Tesla isn't going to go into housing, and you get to your 100 million, and you decide, all right, I'm going to set aside 20 million, or I'm going to set aside 50 million, or I'm going to start plowing back into startups. Do you see yourself more? You're probably familiar with this concept. There's angel investors who invest in companies at the very beginning. There's sort of seed round where they've gotten out of the very beginning stages, but they're still a long way from becoming a really solid company. And then there's I forget what they're called, series rounds, Series A, Series B, Series C, which is where SpaceX is at. And Boring Company's probably ready for, if they haven't done Series A, they're ready for Series A. Neuralink isn't even at Series A yet, right? I think Elon's the only investor and the only formal investor in Neuralink so far. So do you see yourself more as an angel investor or as a seed investor? Where do you see yourself in that?
Yeah, angel, definitely pre-seed. This is like the stage where you're literally writing a check. It's like, and it like you just met somebody at a coffee shop and you just write them a check or something. Like that's I mean, kind of, it's pre-seed basically. It's before all the series rounds and everything. That's probably what I would do, is just angel investing. I mean, I could do some other, I might participate in some seed rounds and series rounds, but I would like to develop a relationship with some of these founders, right? And provide, and also build a network so that when these founders need help, I know exactly who to connect them with and things like that. That's why I love Twitter, and I love meeting everyone, meeting you, and all the people that I talk with, because I just want to have this vast network that I could lean on and eventually help these founders solve problems. And so I think I like that idea. But back really quickly in the Boring Company thing, Boring Company has some jobs that are available. If your audience wants to work for Boring Company, that would be an amazing way to get some private shares and just hold on to those for years and years, and they'll be worth astronomical.
I've got to confess, I've searched for jobs. I searched for jobs in Elon's companies. I'm only 2.5 hours from Canaveral, so I've searched for jobs at Canaveral. Omar just posted Omar's catalog today. Just posted a bunch of jobs for ADAS training or ADAS testing. Like you're testing you're testing FSD, and there was a job in Miami, which is an hour from me, and I applied. I don't think I'm going to get it. I'm not sure I can afford to take the job because I'm reasonably successful at YouTubing, and I'd probably at least have to stop doing the Tesla videos if I was a Tesla employee. I might have to stop doing all videos if I was doing that. So I don't know if I can afford to take the job, but I'm so excited. Well, does this mean I'd get a chance to get Tesla stock? Like an insider's, break on buying. Don't they get options at the lowest price for the previous quarter? Isn't that? I think they get options with the strike price at the lowest price of the previous quarter. So you think Tesla employees are rooting for the stock to go up? They're like, you could dip. We don't mind dips, right? We don't mind an occasional day when it dips, because that means we get in cheaper. I've just heard that. But I am, if I could get in the Boring Company, I would. If they're going to be doing a project in Miami, in theory, I'm going to be looking. If there's an opportunity to help Boring Company, I want to get in on it. So
it's so early. Nobody's talking about Boring Company. The conversations we were just having about Boring Company, no one is talking about. And this is even before when I got on Tesla in 2013. That's the stage where Boring Company is at. It's just it's so early. And if you just are able to work there or somehow acquire, some equity in Boring Company, it'll just be worth ridiculous amount at some point.
Yeah, I literally think it's going to 100,000x from where it is now. Not 100x, not 1,000x, not 10,000x. It's going to 100,000. And the business model. Think about this business model. Okay, first of all, the way they did in Las Vegas was Las Vegas paid them to build the tunnel, right? Las Vegas or the county or the convention center, whatever, paid them to build the tunnel and is paying them to operate the tunnel system. Well, what's the next level up? The next level up is, What if you went to a city and said, we want to build a tunnel system for you, and we're not going to charge you anything to build the tunnel system, and we'll run it for you, and we'll charge tolls or whatever we'll do for revenue, and we'll give you 10% of what we get, right? Or we'll give you 20% of our revenue, right? You're a mayor, you've got all these traffic problems, and you can go to your population and say, hey, we're going to solve the traffic problems for free, and we're going to cut taxes starting 2 years from now when this thing starts operating, because we're going to have all this money coming in from the tunnel system. Like, you know, and if the mayor says, if the city says no, just go to the next city. There's 1,000 cities to choose from, right? And you just find a city who says, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. You do it. Now all of a sudden you got 10 of these systems, and you're making 90% of the revenue in your bank, right? It's just, I see Starlink as a money printing machine. I see Robotaxi network as a money printing machine. I see the Boring Company network as a money print. This is just like this endless, the cat, and Elon's going to take his share and just build the Mars colony. Like, I don't know if you've heard this number. Like, Elon said they want to get 1 million people to Mars, right? So, and he said they're trying to get the cost down to $200,000 a person. Well, 200,000 times 1 million, that's only $200 billion to populate your Mars colony. Elon's going to have 200 billion, right? He almost has it now, right? And
wait, 200,000 times 1 million?
Yeah.
That's
200 billion.
200 billion.
Yeah, $200 billion. Well, he's got 200 billion almost now, right? He may have it on Monday. You know,
right.
You know, so, but you know, if it 10x like we think it's going to 10x, then he's going to have 2 trillion. It's going to be 10% of his wealth to fund the. That's just the people, right? You've got to get the other stuff there. So figure it's $1 trillion total. Elon might be able to cut that check himself, right? The Mars mission might be Elon's just writing. You know, at some point he goes to Jeff Bezos and says, "Hey, you want in on this?" You know, I mean, you know, maybe he gets, but you know, I just see that happening. Anyway, sorry, I wanted to go on to.
I would love to see Bezos and Musk work together. Like, I know they got some egos. Yeah. There's some ego clashes, but like, dude, those two together, working together would be unstoppable.
Yeah, well, I think
when it comes to space exploration,
I think if Bezos is committed to O'Neill colonies, then Elon could say, don't bother building your rocket. Take that money and pay me to launch your stuff up to build your O'Neill colony.
Yeah, they had very different visions for space. Like I feel like Bezos wants to like scale humanity.
Yeah.
And he wants to have more Mozarts, more like really creative people that add a lot of value to the world. And then Musk is like a combination of, we need a backup plan for humanity. It's a little more dark, but you know, he also thinks it would be amazing. He likes the exploration aspect of just, you know, so it's not so much scaling humanity. It's more about like just like backup plan, and also we should just be exploring.
Yes,
you know,
let's go out into the stars.
Yeah, let's go to the stars. Yeah. So it's interesting that they have these very different views.
So, so I'm sorry. I want to. How are you doing on time, by the way? Because we're approaching. We're
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about this be like Elon concept a little bit more. You were talking about angel investing. I want to briefly describe for people one of the options that will probably be available to you and might be. I'm actually started exploring this. Is something called venture capital funds. So there's a fund called Gigafund. There's a fund called Future Ventures, which is Steve Jurvetson, who is the I don't think he's no longer a board member of one of the companies, but he was a board member of Tesla and SpaceX. I think he just tweeted he was a board member of one of them. He's an investor in Boring Company. He was at the Neuralink presentation, I think. So he's like tight with Elon. He invests in a lot of his stuff.
Yeah.
And so
he's legit.
Right.
I like him a lot.
So
his videos are awesome.
Yeah. So he runs a venture fund, and what the venture funds do is they get people to invest, and there's a whole complicated process of how you get into their funds. Because I like contacted Gigafund, and they're like, well, we need to know more about you before we can even talk to you. There's a whole, I think it has to do with SEC regulations. And then you invest, but you don't actually invest. Let's say they're building a $200 million fund. You don't put, let's say you're putting $2 million in. You don't put in $2 million right away. You put in, let's say, $20,000 to secure your place in the fund. And then they take this pool of investors who've committed a total of $200 million, and they go around to startups. And I don't think a lot of them they're not pre-seed. They're usually going for something that's seed round or Series A, Series B type rounds. And they're going around to privately held companies, startup companies, and they're investing in some. They may invest in them fairly early, but they continue investing in them later. And basically, when they have a deal, they come back to their investors and say, okay, we need $100,000 from you in 3 days, right? And then they pull that money together, and then they get in a funding round. So SpaceX just had a funding round that raised $850 million from 69 investors. Of course, Elon had to do 69 investors. And so I think the average fund got a little bit over $10 million, and probably a couple of funds got a lot more. So the average, the typical fund probably got in less than 10 million in the round. So have you thought about contacting some of these venture capital funds to see, hey, can I buy into your next fund? Is that something you've thought about?
Yeah, I think it's too early for me right now. I need to hit that kind of critical mass of like to be an angel investor, I want to have a lot of
Yeah.
capital. I don't have enough yet. Like I have, I'm doing pretty well, but I need to I need to like live off of my margin
Right.
right now. So,
Well, what I mean by that
at
is
some point,
there's the angel investor where you're basically doing it on your own, and you're meeting people in a coffee shop and you're funding their
okay.
investment. Then the other theory is you take, so, and I'm not saying you got 100 million, you take out 50 million and you put it in seed rounds and pre-seed. And I'm saying you take 10 million out of the 100 million and you set that aside and say, okay, I'm going to put 5 million in a venture capital fund or a million in a venture capital fund. And I'm going to like go look for angels. Do you see yourself as almost entirely the pre-seed round, or do you see yourself getting in one of the, and for people who don't know, these funds typically charge, let's say, I'm oversimplifying, but let's say they charge a 2% annual management fee on the money, and they charge 20% carried interest. 20% carried interest is they're taking 20% of the upside. If it all goes well and the fund 3x's, you don't get 3x, you get 2.6x because they took 20% or
yeah.
whatever, 2.4x. You get 2.4x because they took 0.6x off the top. Do you see yourself doing both? Have you ever thought about starting a VC fund? Where do you see yourself in that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, eventually. I mean, I have friends in VC, and I think that I kind of like the idea of, I haven't really given a whole lot of thought to it yet because I'm just not at that place yet. But I like the idea of like going and kind of networking and getting to know. So, for example, some college professors that like MIT or Stanford and getting like the inside scoop on like some of the students and like like if there's some geniuses out there that want to start a company, I want to know about it and I want to be involved. Like it's more personal. Like I want to actually get to know some of these people. Like I just learned of a research firm in Palo Alto that they're paying the researchers, I won't say the name, but they're paying the researchers like $1 million a year. And these are some of the most talented people on earth.
Right.
Like they have multiple PhDs. They've got like, they maybe were math Olympiads when they were kids, or they were they placed on the top score in the country with the Putnam exam. And like some of these people are incredibly technical, talented, just absolute geniuses, right? Like these are the kinds of people that I think I would like to, I'd like to help start a business, or at least help them, help fund their mission. So like,
Right.
yeah, I want to meet people. I don't want to just give like, I want it to be more, I would like to actually just start. I don't want to just sign up for like Shares Post or or Forge Global and just give money to companies in the seed round or something, or series rounds. I want to actually physically meet people, get to know them, help them, and build relationships. So,
Yeah.
and I'll probably start a VC, at some point if I do get that, 100 million at some point.
Yeah.
I'll do that. I feel like that's the best way for me to have a positive societal impact is through capital and investing. It's not like philanthropy is great and all, but I feel like if you invest in the right companies that do have a positive show, like for example, housing is a huge problem. Like if we could, make housing much more affordable,
Right.
and give people more options for housing, like that's going to have a bigger impact than if I were just to donate all of my $100 million to
Right.
some shelters.
Well,
right. Like,
that's one of the ideas I've had is that we've sort of built a community of successful Tesla investors who are, doing well. And I've wondered, could we identify something, and we have some talented people in the group, like talented engineers particularly. Like, have you ever thought, like, there's a startup you would actually want to lead, or there's a startup you would actually want to work in?
I mean, I think I would have much more of an impact being an investor and recognizing talent. I think that's my thing is like spotting talent, spotting ingenuity, spotting like people that have like that's my thing. I don't think I would be like leadership and starting a company is a form of leverage. It's a form of leveraging other people directly, like labor leverage. If you hire people that work underneath you. You're kind of leveraging their labor to build a business, and you have to have good leadership skills. But there's all kinds of issues with like, I mean, running a company is super hard. Like, there's a lot of skills that require that are required that I honestly don't really have. I've never run my own business, but as far as investing and funding, like I feel like I could recognize opportunities. And like I worked for one startup that that I was honestly shocked that it had received funding. Like I was a consultant for this place, and I was like, how in the hell did they receive so much money?
Yeah.
And they received money from like large Fortune 500 companies and like really famous VCs. And I was just like, how the hell did this company like receive any money at all? Like I knew exactly what the company was doing.
Yeah.
I knew it, like, and I was just like, I would never invest in this place. And I just find like maybe I got something. Maybe I can see where, and the company went nowhere. They had to close shop.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I mean, I feel like I can spot some of these opportunities
Right.
very early on just by talking with people. And, you know, like this Elon and Bezos, they have this mindset that like, I think I can pick up on other people,
Yeah.
you know, just being able to sense like, you know, there's a little bit of craziness, a little bit of passion. And they also have this long-term view. They think in a first principles way. They're not too concerned about image. They're more concerned about actually getting shit done.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're not like, for example, you never invest in a startup that spends more time trying to raise money and meeting with investors than they do actually building the product.
Okay.
Like,
So you just let,
like, that's just one thing. There are many things that you would look at, but.
Okay. So we're going to go into the Q&A in a minute, but before we get into the Q&A, I have a question for you that's off topic, but you just led me into it. So, unintentionally. So what you just described seems to me like Lucid Motors. And I'm curious, you know, we talked about Bezos and Musk as leaders, and we talk, and you probably know more about Lucid Motors than I do. I've made some videos about it. Do you have any thoughts on Lucid Motors, and not just Lucid Motors, but say NIO or any of the other EV startups? Are you seeing anybody who has impressed you that these guys look like they're doing something good?
I mean, some of the Chinese EV startups are they'll do well.
Yeah.
Like they'll make, you know, they'll succeed. I mean, there's going to be some EV companies that even some maybe we haven't heard about yet that will come out. But I don't follow it too closely. But Lucid just seems like another Fisker Karma to me, a little bit more advanced.
Yeah.
Or Fisker, sorry, not Karma. It seems a little bit like they're focusing too much on the messaging and the appeal and like it's like vaporware. I feel like they'll be able to deliver the cars, but what's their strategy for AI? Like, do they have any, you know, what's their strategy for robotaxis? Sure, they'll make a few luxury cars, like luxury sedans, but are they going to be able to have like a, you know, build a mass-produced vehicle like the Model 3 and go through that, what Tesla went through? I don't think they can. I don't think they have the stomach for it. I don't think that their leaders are anywhere near as experienced as Elon was at this point. I mean, you can say Lucid is where Tesla was at in 2012.
Right.
Like, because there was like, I was waiting for my Model S for months and months, and I received a lot of deadlines. Like I was told, oh, the car will take, you know, 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, and another 3 months, another 3 months. And it just took a long time. And it turns out like they had a lot of canceled reservations. I even had friends that canceled their Model S orders.
Right.
So they were struggling to determine like how many cars to actually build, what would they order, like how many orders they had.
Yeah.
So they had to like, you know, so maybe Lucid's going through the same thing.
Okay.
But you know, so I think they will be a going concern. I think Lucid will be around, but like I just don't think they're going to be competitors to Tesla.
So for those who don't know, I'm more skeptical of Lucid. I don't think they're ever going to deliver a car. I have a bet with with 2-Bit Da Vinci that they will. He's agreed that if they deliver less than 100 cars this year, then they will, and if they deliver a car with less than 450 miles of range, that they will not have achieved what they will fall far short of what they said they would achieve. And I have agreed that if they deliver more than 100 cars and they deliver more than 450 miles of range, I'll say, okay, they're for real. So that we have a bet on that. But we'll see. I don't believe that they can credibly deliver a car unless it meets the levels they've set, and I don't think they can meet the tests that they've set for themselves. But anyway, so let's move into Q&A. I'm going to look in the comment section just see if I see any questions now. Um, let's see. There were some questions before. Do you guys think Tesla's going up on Monday? So me personally, I do not make short-term stock predictions. I don't know if you bother making short-term stock predictions. I do think it'll go up Monday, but I'm wrong. On short-term predictions, I'm usually wrong. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think it depends on the market. If it's a good day, if it's a green day or a red day in the market, that could impact. But like, I think it'll be like, some people are saying 3 Gordons, which is like maybe $60.
That's a Ross Gerber thing. Yeah.
Yeah, Ross Gerber said that. I think Gary Black said that. But yeah, I think it could be 3 Gordons.
3 Gordons.
It could be like a 10% day or maybe 5%, somewhere between 5 and 10%. Who knows? I have no idea.
So here's a question the question was posed to me, but I think it's better for you. Do you think AI could solve the problem of programming languages constantly being created with different frameworks and libraries for different domains? It's like trees of trees. Do you think that human-coded software is overly complex and there's room for AI to solve that problem? Is that a problem, and could AI help with it?
So the question was like AI creating languages to solve problems.
No, that we currently have a plethora of computer language. The way I understood the question was we currently have this tree of trees of computer languages with different frameworks and libraries for different domains, and it's overly complicated, and maybe AI could solve the problem. As I understand the question, this is a question from Sam.
Yeah. No, I think there's always going to be human written code out there, but AI over time is going to eat more and more of it. It's going to take a long time. It'll take many years, but I don't think it'll ever reach full parity. There'll always be human written code because AI requires a lot of data and a lot of feedback loops and back propagation. There's a lot of, it's just, whenever you have something that needs to be scaled massively, like robotaxis, there's like going to be millions of cars someday. There's a lot of sensor input. That goes into these things. Like anytime you have a very large problem with a lot of data, then AI, I think will it's going to dominate. But like, there's always going to be like, I don't think JavaScript is going away. I don't think Python, there's always going to be DSLs or domain specific languages in those programming languages to solve very custom specific problems. Like those aren't going away. But all the real money is going to be made with like, these advanced like machine learning and AI and stuff. I think people writing handwritten algorithms in specific languages will be like, yeah, it'll be useful, but it's not going to be the potential, the margin potential won't be nearly as big as machine learning and AI. So I don't know if that answers the question, but these frameworks aren't going away. All these languages will be around.
Yeah. Do we still have COBOL? Does COBOL still exist?
COBOL still exists in banks and in the military. There's still all these old languages. That kind of proves our point. Like there's always going to be a place for these old languages. All right. Fortran is used.
Fortran's still around. Yeah.
So it's used in the scientific realm. It's super fast.
Yeah. All right. So let me ask you. Here's a question. This question is overly simple, but there's a question, Starbase question mark, which I think Jessica left, but Jessica said, I think she was curious whether you would move to Starbase, what you think of Starbase, this spot in Boca Chica, Texas, that they may be creating a town. What do you think about that whole development?
I haven't really read much about it, but it sounds cool. Like, I like that. Is it going to be a new town?
I think they're going to build up a town around Starbase. Yeah, they changed the name of Boca Chica to Starbase. Yeah. And I think they're going to be building a lot around it. I think that the launches are probably at some point going to be offshore rather than onshore, and so it won't be so awful to live there. Because if there's 3 or 10 launches a day, you probably don't want to live too close to that.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be cool to watch the first few, and after a while, it'd be like, okay, another launch.
I would love to be around more people, more Tesla engineers or people who work for Elon or. Being in that area, I think would be awesome. Like, I think location really matters, like where you live, because it opens up so many opportunities. It's like if you live in a place like Palo Alto or Austin, you're just going to be exposed to so many great startups, and you'll have a lot more opportunities to invest and
a lot of bright people too. It's nice to be nice to be around bright people.
Yeah. Exactly. yeah, Mars would be eventually an amazing place to stay, at least for a while.
Well,
Like it, you know,
unfortunately, you can't just go for a week. It's a minimum 2 year
yeah,
trip.
for a week.
I think
Yeah.
it's a minimum 2.5 year trip if I got the numbers right.
Wow.
So, well, maybe it's 3 months there, 18 months waiting, and then 3 months back if things improve. So let me just address this question was to me, Warren, what are your thoughts on premium connectivity revenue, $10 a month? Where is that calculated income statement evaluation model? So I do not value that in my models. My models are much more simplified. And I think that that kind of software, while it's real in its revenue, is trivial when you compare it to Robotaxi and you compare it to the margins on vehicles and the value that they're going to generate by producing batteries and products with batteries. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Does the connectivity revenue move the needle for you with Tesla stock?
Mm, I don't know. It's hard to say right now. Yeah, I have to look. I have to see.
Because you said you don't model anyway, so
I don't really model. Yeah, I think you know, yeah, because there are too many unknowns, and you know, I could probably model for the next year or two, but that'd be kind of boring. Like I don't really care.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
Yeah.
but in 10 years, I think it's more useful for me to kind of do my own like first principles thinking, and also just you know like I learned a lot from the Twitter community and also your channel and a lot of other people. You know, just thinking bigger, thinking about um, you know some of the things they could do versus the things that they say that they're doing. I can see where if you follow the path of where they're going, you can kind of see um, you know things like the Boring Company houses, right? That's kind of to me seems inevitable,
yeah.
right? They're gonna do something with housing. I know they will.
Yeah. Let me just touch back on that. I know we're off the question, but my problem with housing is I feel like Elon recognizes limits to his own bandwidth.
Yeah.
And I think Elon, we're going back to Tesla's future for a second. So I think Starlink is going to spin off in an IPO, right? And Elon is going to be able to not worry about Starlink. That Gwynne Shotwell can manage that, or whoever's going to manage Starlink can manage that. I don't have to worry about, it's going to move that off his plate, right? Mm-hmm. I think the Robotaxi network, once it goes live and once it's working, once it works, right? Right now, there's this engineering challenge. There's this innovation challenge of getting the full self-driving to work, getting the Robotaxi network to work. There's a certain point where he's achieved that. And he doesn't need, I actually could see them spinning off the Robotaxi network in an IPO. Like, we don't need to own this in-house anymore. Let's get this off my plate so I don't have to worry about it. And let's focus on the challenges that matter, right? The things where, you know, if you're Elon Musk, you've got this tremendous talent for innovating in various ways. Once you've solved that problem, you move on. So the Boring Company, I think there's not a lot, you know, we know tunnels work. Like with Neuralink, we don't know if the brain implant thing's going to work. We don't know if we don't know if a human can deliver a healthy baby on Mars, right? If a human woman gets pregnant on Mars, will the baby be born okay? There's all kinds of challenges with all these, but we know tunnels work, right? So once they scale Boring Company, once Boring Company starts succeeding in its business, I don't know that Elon needs to put and he already said he doesn't put much time into Boring Company, right? He said it's like 1% of his brain cycles or whatever. So I think he really wants to focus on Mars, and I think he really wants to focus on Neuralink. I may be unfairly evaluating Elon, but I see that he wants to devote himself to bigger challenges. And I could see Drew taking that on. I think Drew has learned a lot from Elon, and I could see it's not an Elon project housing. It's like a Drew project. Drew says, okay, we've solved the full self-driving cars, and we've solved the manufacturing problem to the point where we're like really, really good at this. We can get better and we'll still innovate, but let's turn that manufacturing talent to houses. I could see it coming from Drew more than from Elon. Because, you know, Elon's 50.
Yeah, he's getting old. I mean, he's still relatively young, but older.
I'm 55, so he's young for me. But I see it like, no, but I see that window, right? Like I see like, you know, when I'm 70, I'm probably not going to be that innovative anymore, right? I got 15 years left, and you know, I'm hopeful that I will still be innovative and so on when I'm 70. Maybe I'll have a Neuralink that'll help me maintain it. I don't know. That's a quick question. Yeah. If Neuralink becomes available, would you get one?
I think I would wait a little bit.
I'm not saying first generation. I'm saying it's fifth generation. It's working at other people.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like some of this, Neuralink sounds amazing. I like the idea of like increasing our throughput. You know, like right now when when it's transmit our ideas, we will talk, and it's a very low, bit rate, or like a low throughput way of communicating. Or when we read, we're limited by the scan speed of our eyes, and like and also when we type, I mean, we can only type so many characters a minute, and like having something like Neuralink to increase the speed of information that information taken would be amazing. But I don't know. I think I like one thing I like about Neuralink is it can help people like paraplegics, or it can help people that aren't able to function normally. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit like, it's so early with Neuralink. There's so many unknowns. There's so many risk factors. Like, I mean, it's still like in a research phase. Like it's very, very early.
Yeah.
I just don't see that being monetized anytime soon, like in a big way.
Yeah.
So it's a much longer term play, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like personally, I would invest in Boring Company or SpaceX ahead of Neuralink.
No, I don't mean investing. Would you have a chip put in your head?
Oh, chip put in my head. Yeah. I think I maybe eventually would, but only after seeing other people, seeing that it works, and it has clear benefits. But
well, what if it's $10,000 if you get it, if you sign up before the end of this year, and it's $100,000 if you wait? Would you sign up for the $10,000? You know, people like you can get FSD now for $8,000, but if you don't get it by tomorrow, it's going to be $10,000. Would that motivate you to sign up? Just related to that, I ordered a solar roof, and they raised the prices on solar roof, but I got my order in, so I'm like totally stoked now because I'm going to get my solar roof cheap. Let me go to another question. Sorry, because that wasn't an audience question. That was a me question. There were several people who were asking about 3D printing houses. My own view is I'm not sure. I think Elon has said this before. It's not clear that 3D printing scales. Do you think that that's an angle that might work for home construction?
Yeah, with the 3D printing, like I agree. I don't know if it's going to scale because, like, think about like when you 3D print something, you need this entire you need like this 3-axis thing that goes around and up, and so you need to build this entire structure around a house. So setting up all that, I'm just thinking about it from a first principles way. Like if you think about this machine, you need to transport all that equipment, you need to assemble it, you need to test it and get up and running, and finally you can turn it on to build the house. Like I don't know if that's something that can scale, because you need one of those machines for every house you're making. And how quickly can you build the house? And also there's different materials you want to use. With like a 3D printer, usually it's like one uniform material that you're using to build something. Right. I mean, you can probably, maybe that's not. Yeah, I feel like it might not be viable to 3D print. I'll just take this take on it. So people, every time I bring up 3D printing homes and I say it doesn't scale, people say, look, they built one in Long Island. It's like, okay, did they build two? Right? If they built one, where's the second one? Where's the third one? And I would kind of say, like, if you believe that 3D printing homes is the answer and you have an idea for a startup, then call Jason up, meet him for coffee somewhere in Hollywood or Hollywood Hills, and explain it to him. And then Jason's going to make the judgment whether he thinks you have the talent and the plan and whether this is going to work, because you're good at judging people, right? Right? Because I have these conversations with people like, all right, that sounds like a great idea. I think, I don't know if you get this. I get a lot of people contact me with these great ideas. It's like, well, I'm not the guy to do that. I'm a lawyer. I'm not an engineer. I mean, I'm an engineer wannabe. Like I started writing code, I started writing code in BASIC in like the late 70s. Right, I wrote on Commodore 4K PET. I made my own little Pac-Man game. I'm not saying it was a good Pac-Man game, but I made the equivalent of a Pac-Man game. It was terrible, but I made it. I used landmines because I couldn't get the ghosts to move in a consistent way. So I always aspired to be a coder. I actually took a Python class when I was in my retirement phase. Like I was playing golf and I was playing golf too much. I took a class in Python on Coursera. Right, I've always like wanted to be a coder. It's like one of the things I feel like I missed my calling. That I should. And at the same time, I'm terrible at commenting. I'm terrible at like if you're going to be a coder, you should do it right. And it's like I like doing it doesn't mean I was good at it. So, but coding is literacy. It's literacy today. It's like what reading and writing was 400 years ago. It's like you need to know at least you don't need to be an amazing coder. Just knowing what you can do with code, like taking a basic class, is like equivalent to learning how to read and write.
Yes.
Maybe 400 years ago.
Yes.
It's like that's like to succeed in the 21st century.
Yep.
You need to do some basic coding, right?
Yep.
You don't need to be an engineer, but understanding how that works is key. Like,
okay.
But for the 3D printing thing, that you need an extruder. Like, you need something that extrudes the material. And like, I feel like that would be kind of weird with something like a brick. Like, yeah, there could be machines that build the structure, but I don't think that the classic, the paradigm of having an extruder that shoots some liquid extrusion material, in this kind of structure, like in that kind of way, I don't think it works for a house. I think it works for like more uniform structures, like maybe like some large metal object.
Yeah. I kind of like your idea about using boring bricks and combine it with my idea of using robots. Like if you take the Boston Dynamics robots and you have the dojo trains them to perceive space and operate, then maybe you could have Boston Dynamics robots building structures, right?
Yeah, I mean, think about that. Like, think about, you can actually have dojo. I don't know. Like, you could have some architectural designs developed by AI.
Yes.
And also manufacturing process behind that developed by something like dojo.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, that sounds cool.
Now you just led me into something else. I have a theory about Roadster. Yeah. Okay, now this is probably wrong. Okay, we're always wrong, and we're trying to be less wrong, but I think I'm probably wrong about this. But I have this theory that Roadster is actually, the chassis was actually designed by AI. That if there's a video, I saw these guys were doing these dune buggies, and they were making the dune buggies. They were 3D printing the chassis of the dune buggy. Now remember, 3D printing doesn't scale, but Roadster is going to be made in low volume. Okay, so they were 3D printing the chassis, and they put all these sensors on it, and then the AI assess how the chassis performed under the stresses of actually driving it around. And then the AI would then generate a new chassis design, and they iterated. And so I have the theory that Roadster is actually going to have an AI designed chassis. Is that crazy?
Yeah, no, it's not crazy at all. And like that's totally what's going to happen. Like, things that you typically wouldn't think a computer could design it will design. Like, you can actually run experiments on housing structures. I mean, there's software that you can feed in a CAD model of a house, and it'll tell you what this, what the strength is, for.
Hold on, I just lost you.
Oh yeah, so you can actually feed a CAD model into like structural engineering programs, and they can actually determine how strong, if certain structural engineering requirements are met.
Sorry, back up headphones. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can anyone hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
I can't hear you for some reason. Can anybody hear Jason?
Check. You guys hear me?
Jason, I can't hear you. I'm not sure what happened there.
Let's see. Okay. Yes.
Oh, I got it. It's me.
Oh, okay.
It's me. I switched headphones, and it switched me to the default audio instead of the headphones.
Got it.
Very sorry to everybody for that. Okay, so we were talking about 3D printing. Oh, the Roadster.
Yeah, the AI generated chassis. Yeah. No, as long as there's you can have these things generate. You can have AI maybe generate CAD models and test them out for structural engineering, requirements.
Yeah.
Or things like, build a house that meets this square footage requirement, that has these structural properties, that use the fewest amount of bricks possible.
Yeah.
Like that.
Right.
Yeah, and then you don't need to have an engineer spend weeks, or an architect spend weeks designing that structure. You can have Dojo just run through millions of models and come up with one or a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see if there's any other questions. I don't know what the heck happened there. We don't need to worry about that. I screwed something up on my audio. It's probably on my end. Let me just see if there's any other questions. Plastic is bad. Oh, Jessica Curse is streaming us to Clubhouse. Oh, this was a question. First of all, you have a Model S now?
I have a Model 3 right now.
Model 3. Have you thought about getting the new Model S?
I may have bought it if it was available. Like I bought my Model 3 last in December, and the Plaid, I don't even think it had been announced yet, or it wasn't available yet.
Yeah.
But if I just waited a little bit longer, I probably would have gotten a Plaid S.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like the concept of the yoke steering wheel? This was the question. The question that I was addressing was the yoke steering wheel.
Yeah, I want that. Yeah, it sounds. I wonder how it drives. Like, I wonder if the turning radius is going to be tighter, and that'd be cool. I'm curious.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the Model Y while we're talking about that. So I have this theory about the Berlin Model Y, the Berlin and Texas Model Y. So the current Model Y has a rear casting and a regular battery pack. The Berlin and Texas Model Y will have front and rear castings and structural battery pack. And I was talking with, if you know Limiting Factor, Jordan Giesecke, I was talking with him on Twitter, and we have kind of roughly agreed that we think that Model Y for the same range will drop. I think he used 200, maybe he used 250 kilograms. Ballpark for Americans, about 500 pounds, that the Model Y is going to drop in terms of weight. So the Model Y currently, the long-range Model Y or performance Model Y is about 4,400 pounds. I think the Model Y drops to like under 4,000 pounds. And that's a lot of weight to drop.
Yeah, that is.
And you're just going to have a stiffer chassis. So I think the Model Y is going to be an amazing vehicle. I think when they first pump it out of Berlin and Austin, they're going to choose to go with like a high performance version because it'll be, low quantities at first. And you can't make it too cheap because you won't be able to sell the Fremont Ys. Right?
Yeah.
You won't be able to sell the Fremont and Shanghai Ys if the Berlin and Texas Model Ys are too much better and too cheap. So you have to sell them at a high price. Mark Plott asks, how about Gigapress for homes? I don't think that works. Right? That doesn't work, right? You're not going to make your homes out of aluminum. Maybe you would. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. Let's see what we got here. Somebody says bricks degrade, whether plastic is ideal. I'm not sure that's true. I think bricks last a long time. So did I cut you off there? What do you think about Model Y, the Berlin and Texas Model Y? How amazing do you think they'll be?
Yeah, I think that's going to be, when Elon tweeted, he thinks that Tesla's going to be the biggest company in the world in a few months. I think it has to do, I think like Model Y and Giga Berlin could be part of that. Because I don't even think they're delivering Model Ys in Europe right now, are they? I don't think so.
I think they might be delivering some from China, but I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, that's right. But the demand is massive. I think it's going to be an amazing car in Europe. And no, they're just going to flip a switch and just start delivering tons and tons of Model Ys in Giga Berlin because the manufacturing process in Giga Berlin will be, it's the next generation. I think it's going to be like, they're going to be able to ramp up quickly in Berlin. I mean, they have 8 gigapresses and
right. Yeah, my number on that is if there's 8 gigapresses and it's four for the front and 4 for the rear, then rear casting, front casting. We were talking about this the other day. I don't know if you were in this conversation, and we think that means they'll be able to produce 1,000 a day, 250 per gigapress a day, 1,000 a day between 4 gigapresses for each. And that works out to, is that the number? So, 1,000 a day per gigapress. So that works out to $1 million a year from that, just from the Model Y factory in Berlin at 250 days. If it only produces for 250 days, it's $1 million vehicles a year. And then they do Model 3. They're going to do Model 3 the same way, and that'll be another $1 million a year. So Berlin will be producing $2 million a year, maybe by the end of 2022.
Yeah, I mean, the 40 to 680 line will be there, all the gigapresses. I think it's going to be, they're going to get serious in Berlin. So I think that's part of it. Elon could have also been referring to the FSD release, but I think Berlin is part of it, a big part of it.
All right, so we've been going for nearly 2.5 hours. I feel like we've covered most of everything. I'm seeing questions come up that we've already talked about. So like about Austin. So I don't have a lot more. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Jason? We've had a great conversation. Any questions you have for me?
Definitely. So like how, So you're investing. So 2030 is your you know, that's your year for all of your models, right? Like you're predicting kind of investment. Your models go out to 2030, right?
Yeah, I don't go beyond it.
And you plan on just holding until 2030 or just beyond that?
Sure,
Or
I'm 55 and most of my money is in IRAs. Most of my Tesla stock is in IRAs. So I do not expect, and I live a comfortable lifestyle without using my Tesla stock, right? I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying I couldn't spend more money, but I'm reasonably comfortable with my lifestyle the way it is now. So I don't have this like craving, overwhelming desire that I need something better, right? Like we've talked, my wife and I have talked about it. Maybe we'd sell our house. We have a kid who's in high school. We probably want to stay in the same in 10th grade. So we got like a 6-year window where we probably want to stay in the same house until the second kid. We have a kid who's in college. We probably want to stay in the same place until the second kid graduates college. So that's a 6-year window. So after 6 years, maybe at that point, if all works out, we sell this house and we buy something somewhere else, except we kind of like where we are. And we're probably gonna have a Tesla solar roof, and we're probably gonna have power walls, and we might switch to HVAC. Who knows? Like if we invest in this house, I'm not gonna want to leave this house, but I have this fantasy about living literally on the ocean, so I can go for a walk because we walk every morning. So I would probably rather do that walk on the beach if I could. But we might be able to do that without selling Tesla stock too. That's always a possibility. So. But my time horizon really, you wouldn't normally touch an IRA until 65, so it would really be 2031. I just use 2030 because it's a nice round number, and I'm not really planning on, I don't expect to sell Tesla stock until I think it's fair value, and it's persistently undervalued, and I don't know if there's going to be a watershed moment where the media coverage changes and they start treating Tesla more like Apple gets treated. Because Apple gets reasonably favorable press coverage, right? Ford gets reasonable. If at some point the media changes and they start giving Tesla reasonably favorable press coverage, that's what's holding the stock down. I
just talked to a Model Y owner at a Tesla supercharger last night. He just bought the car. He was looking into buying another Acura SUV, and he was shopping around with his wife, and he was like, and then he realized Model Y was around $40,000. And he's like, that's around how much we were going to pay for the Acura. So let's take a look at the Y. And went on a test drive, and he decided to buy it right there. So, and he just picked it up, last week. And he was like so happy with the car. And he's like, I can't believe I never thought to buy a Y until I realized the price point was where I was at. And then I said, well, do you own any Tesla stock? And he said, no, but isn't that kind of expensive? So it's like, there's still this idea that like Tesla stock is like,
it's overpriced.
It's overpriced. And even for people who experience the product and everything, it's like, most people still don't understand like how great of an investing opportunity it is. And, so I think there's definitely, and there's also the FUD continues, right? There's still a ton of FUD out there.
All right. Any other questions for me?
One more question. What do you think? What's a business opportunity for Tesla or for Elon like that nobody is talking about? Like, what is something that literally? I mean, I've heard a lot of things and I've come up with a lot of ideas. Is there any kind of area that you think Tesla can get into that you think would be extremely profitable? I mean, ideally leveraging AI or machine learning, like. Something like we just mentioned, using Dojo to design not only complex products like a house, but actually the manufacturing around that, how to optimize the manufacturing process around that. Like, what are some...
I have some big ideas, but I don't think you heard my idea about like a rear entry door to the car. I have this vision of, I don't think I have the ideas you're talking about. I have this vision of like I thought about the city, the housing idea. I actually have a video. If you check my channel, I have a video. What if Tesla built housing? And it's actually not that far off what you said because there's a boring company tunnel involved in the plot. But I think
good.
Well, number one, I think I have this like I don't know if this is a business model. This is just like a cool idea. About this concept of van life. Right. And there's this idea of digital and nomad. So what if Tesla built minibuses and they became like youth hostels on wheels?
Yeah.
Right. And the minibus, drive, you wake up in the morning in the minibus. It's like a 10-passenger minibus with beds instead of seats, where they normally fit 20 and they're able to squeeze 10 people sleeping or 8 people sleeping or whatever. And you wake up in the morning in San Diego, and you have fun in San Diego all day. And then at the end of the day, you hop in another, maybe it's the same one or maybe it's a different one. You hop in and it drives you to another city. And you're just like cruising, checking out the scene. And you're just traveling different places. And the cost of riding in a Tesla minibus overnight would be less than a hotel, would be less than owning a home. And you literally just say, it's almost like following the dead. You just like go off and spend a year traveling, and maybe you spend 2 years traveling. I think that it's really hard to grasp. I'm going to say, I'll take it a different direction from your question. The world is going to change a lot in the next 10 years. The concept of transportation, like the very idea of owning a car, is going to become irrelevant within 10 years. You're not going to want to bother owning a car. It's going to be easier to ride in a Robotaxi. It's less like you just described. This guy was shopping for an Acura versus, and he looked at the Y. He had to put time into choosing a car. Imagine if you wanted to go somewhere, you just picked up your phone, you pressed the button, and by the time you got out of your house, the car was waiting for you. And when you're leaving the restaurant after you got done, you press the button and it's waiting. You never have to search in the parking lot for it. You never have to buy car insurance. You never have to deal with a car salesman. You never have, you have to get an oil change. Just all the things that we all sort of just take for granted in car ownership that are that if you thought about it, it's like, well, what if I didn't have to put time into that? And that's just one aspect of it. The world is changing so radically.
I've been thinking about this for years, as early as 2014, 2015, of like, I think after Autopilot came out, like I was like, why don't we just have a nomad? There's going to be people that will just do this van life thing, and they'll be able to get in their car, go to sleep, wake up in Yosemite Valley, go hiking, and then get in the car again and wake up, and they'll be in LA or something. And there might even be businesses around this where, like, if you're part of this Tesla van life network, you can go to like community areas, like communal areas, where you can have like a shared TV room and like shared showers and game rooms and whatever. If you're a young person, you don't have any responsibilities or bills, or
you're retired.
You're retired. You can essentially have this alternative lifestyle where all you need is this van, and you can work remotely. You can support yourself and pay off your van and own it at some point, but you can drive around all over the world and just like go from stop to stop and network with other people and just have a good time. And all you really need is a bed and maybe a shower. And some people will choose this lifestyle, right? It's kind of, and it's not a bad way. It's a great way to build up equity, because you're not paying for all these big ticket items that you.
Yeah. What if you didn't bother having a house, right? What if you just?
Yeah, you don't need a house. You could just do that for as long as you're willing to tolerate it, and then at some point you'll have a massive portfolio of cryptocurrency or stock or whatever you choose to invest in, and then you can go buy that boring company brick home in the countryside or whatever.
Right. So I just think, but to address your question, I think that there's so many changes happening in the world that it's really hard for us to come to grips with what, like when I interviewed Omar a while back, and we were talking about, imagine like a Robotaxi Cybertruck that's cruising around that has a pizza oven in it, right? And you order a pizza, and the pizza oven, the Cybertruck pulls into your driveway, and you take the pizza fresh out of the oven, right? Or the robot takes it fresh out of the oven, brings it to the door, and instead of it having waited a half hour from when they cooked it to when you got it, it's like fresh right there. It just, and I'm not saying that's a viable business model. I'm just saying there's so many potential business models, and I think you've been through some of these changes. So I'm older than you, and I just I see you have like a big change, like Microsoft. The personal computer revolution led to so that's a wave, right? And then Microsoft Excel rode on the wave, and Microsoft Excel itself was sort of like a mini wave, and things spun off building businesses on Microsoft Excel wave. And then the internet comes along, and the internet's this big wave, right? And then Google comes along with search, and now search itself is a wave, right? And there's search engine optimization and search engine marketing, and then social media comes along, and now there's social media marketing, and there's all these different things that get spun off. And when you have a wave, there's things that come along that that Elon can't imagine will happen, right? That the most future forward thing people can't happen. And so we're about to see this massive wave that's going to come from autonomous vehicles and autonomous robots and space. There's these big waves coming, and it's really like when you talk about being an angel investor, it's actually like you want to talk to people who see the waves coming and they're taking a shot on something that might work on that wave. And if you've ever surfed, and I've surfed a tiny bit and I'm stuck at it, right? If you've ever surfed, you know, sometimes you don't hit the wave right?
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people who are trying to surf that wave and they're going to wipe out. But some people are going to be the next Excel, right? Some people are going to be the next Facebook, the next Google, or the next, you know, big search engine optimization company that employs, you know, 1,000 people, right? There's all these different little opportunities on the waves. And I don't think any of us is capable of seeing where the waves are going and what things are going to ride well on those waves.
Yeah.
Is that too big a concept? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's you're right. I mean, and what's crazy is you never really know who's going to be the biggest rider of that wave. I mean, you can see the PC revolution coming. I mean, Gary Kildall created a CPM operating system before, you know, Windows, and there was VisiCalc before Excel, and
yes,
there were technologies leading up to it. But then it took somebody like Bill Gates with his, you know, his
business wisdom,
and his, you know, to be frank, ruthless business mindset. Somebody who just, you know, is laser focused on what they want to accomplish. Like finding that person is a big part of it, because it's not enough just to see the wave coming or to invest in the companies that get in early. You need to find like the next Bill Gates or the next Larry Page or, you know, someone like that. But yeah, I think the world is definitely going to change, and you know, the change is getting more and more. You know, it's accelerating. It's like the singularity is near. You know, Ray Kurzweil, that's a great book. You know, it helps you think exponentially, because some people can't see. A lot of people can't see what you see, right? Yeah. You have this mind where you can actually. You're very creative. You're very imaginative. You know, and I kind of have that too. And we can see other opportunities. It's almost like a really unfair advantage that we have, because we can actually kind of see the world before it's built in some way. So like that playful, childish mind, you know, is like super useful for disruptive companies when you're trying to find them. But yeah.
No, it's interesting when you.
Oh, good.
What I was going to say is, like you talked about, you never run a business, and I did. I had a law firm. I probably had more than 5 people working for me. I lost count. I hated it. I was not a manager. I don't think I was a leader. I think, you know, I built a successful law firm. I don't want to sell myself short. I rode the search engine optimization wave to building the best lawyer website in Albany, New York, which got me a lot of personal injury cases, got me a lot of criminal cases, a lot of traffic cases, and I made a lot of money, right? And I was successful in some ways. There were good years and bad years, but I never felt like I was good at managing people. I never felt like I was I was talking to this other lawyer, and I think like the smart thing I could have done was to try to build it much bigger. Like as I got to, let's say we had 4 lawyers, let's say. I could have tried to build a 10 lawyer. Let me just really quickly go through this. If you're a lawyer, if you can bring in clients, right? Let's say you're charging, I'm going to go simple numbers. Let's say the numbers are bigger than this today, but let's say you can charge $200 an hour for your time, and you start your own law firm and it's just you. If you can get to 500 hours of paid work, which is 10 hours a week, then you just made $100,000 in revenue, and you kind of have like a potentially going business depending on your expenses. You can get to 1,000 hours, which is only 20 hours a week of paid work. Now you got 200,000. Is that right? Yeah, that's $200,000 in revenue coming in. Now you've got a pretty good business. You get to 1,500 hours, right? That's 30 hours a week. Then now you're making 300,000. You're making good money. You get to 2,000 hours, $400,000 in revenue. Wow, you're doing really good. At some point, you've got more work than you can do. So you need to hire somebody. So you pay that lawyer $50 an hour, and you bill him out at $200 an hour. Now you're making $150 an hour on his work. Now you hire 5 of them.
Yeah.
Right? Now you're making crazy money. Now, I wasn't generating that kind of revenue. I was successful. I had some good years, but I wasn't going crazy like that. But I remember I met this one lawyer. I was talking to this one lawyer, and he's like, well, why wouldn't somebody want to build a bigger law firm? Why wouldn't somebody want to make more money? It's like, because I don't want to manage that many people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, think about how many people Elon effectively manages. You got to manage the people who manage the people who manage the people, right? You're the manager who manages the manager who manages the manager.
It's like Tim Ferriss talks about this in the 4-Hour Workweek, how like you got to be careful when you start a business, because it can be this thing that it just owns you. Like you really, and you can't get out of it. Maybe nobody wants to buy your business.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes you end up in a situation where you have no life and you have to maintain this flywheel that's spinning at a high rate of speed. And
Right.
it is like it starts to, and you become miserable, right? So
Right.
like, yeah, just running a business is no joke. I mean, human leverage is probably, I'd say, the least desirable form of leverage because like it's political and quickly, it requires a lot of these leadership skills that like most people don't have, and also people can turn it. You're like one step away from mutiny. Like people can stir up rumors and then turn against you, and
Yeah.
like I don't know, it's very it's not the best form of leverage. The best form of leverage is like if you can write code and run that code on many machines, or you can like, this is all Naval, right? Naval talks about this a lot. Or if you own capital, that's a form of leverage. Like there are many ways to apply leverage, but leverage is key for building wealth. And yeah, I feel like starting a business myself and being a CEO and all that stuff is just, I'm better as an investor. I can add more value that way. But some people are born to do that thing. I mean, like Elon is one of these people that is like, he can attract the best brains, the best talent, and unblock them. He just unblocks everyone, empowers everyone underneath him, and
So Trent,
also,
go ahead. Well, Trent had a question that related. You mentioned cryptocurrency before, and Trent had a question. Thoughts on Dogecoin? Is Elon hinting at something? I think Elon's just kidding about Dogecoin, but sometimes I wonder, what do you think about Elon and Dogecoin?
I don't know. I looked at the Dogecoin fork, or the Dogecoin, fork of Bitcoin. Dogecoin is based off of the Bitcoin or the Bitcoin Core code base, and I found the fork and everything, and it's like there's been very little activity on that code base for like 3 years, almost none. I'd say if anything, Elon could like take it over or do a fork of, some early fork of Bitcoin and come up with an inflationary currency. I don't know. I have no idea, but I think there's something he's doing something with Bitcoin, with crypto, something big. And Emmett Peppers talks about this a lot. Like, we don't know everything yet. I think he's going to either, launch his own currency or maybe like take over Dogecoin or something. But no, there's something brewing with crypto, and they'll probably announce. I think he's going to announce something this year.
Okay.
Yeah. So
any other questions for me? Any other thoughts?
I was just going to say we talked about AI being used to design products, but I think it's being used. I think that Tesla is using Dojo or something like that to create the machine that builds the machine. Like he's actually using it to design factories.
Right.
That's why they're so efficient. I feel like they're using some AI when they design their factories. I think that's. Yeah,
I like it.
I don't know. I have no evidence for that, but I think they're starting to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. A lot of positive comments here, but I think we're done with the questions. So cool. I'm going to call it. We're at 2 hours and 45 minutes, which is longer than I usually go with an interview. So Jason, thank you so much for coming on. Congratulations on your success. I look forward to seeing more from you and seeing you on Clubhouse and seeing you on Twitter. It's been a pleasure. Any last words for the audience?
No, I think that's it. I mean, thanks, Warren. Really appreciate it. It was super fun, and look forward to joining on some more Clubhouse rooms with you. And
great. We're talking just an advanced notice. We're going to be talking about smart cities, which Jason mentioned much earlier. I think we're going to be having a conversation about smart cities at like 3:30 p.m. on Tuesday, East Coast time, U.S. East Coast time. And really quick. T-shirts at elonbits.com. Support the channel on Patreon. I wrote a book called Fair DUI. It's on Amazon. All links to all this are in the description below. Jason, I'm going to end the stream, and if you would hang on with me for just one more second.
Sure.
Okay. So, thank you very much.